Hello everyone, subscribe to my channel to not miss new trending manhwa.
Breaking news flashes across the city skyline. It's announced that the identity of an infamous con artist, who deceived the entire nation, has finally been revealed thanks to an anonymous informant. Live news broadcasts detail how the scammer, responsible for a 100 billion won fraud, impacted 30% of the population. The sheer scale of the fraud reached 100 billion won. Yet this wasn't the full extent of the criminal's deceptive activities. Further investigations uncovered that the perpetrator had been involved in various scams since childhood. Currently, the perpetrator is on the run, evading the police, a TSK of annoyance escaping him. Identified as a 35-year-old unregistered male, it remains uncertain if the name he used is genuine due to his unregistered status. The authorities have now named the criminal as Han Jun-woo, age 35, displaying his picture. Han Jun-woo himself, seeing his picture broadcast, wonders with annoyance why that particular photo was used. Resigned to his situation, he acknowledges under the moonlight that what's done is done. With the police intensifying their investigation, Han Jun-woo, under the cover of night, decides it's finally time to get some rest. The story then flashes back 30 years, where a young boy is being sternly questioned about whether he took something. In a grand room, the small child, looking up at an adult, timidly responds that he doesn't know. Tears welling in his eyes, the boy further insists he didn't see anything at all. Nearby, a man in a suit scratches his head in confusion, muttering about where the missing item could have gone. This same man, now visibly panicked, realizes he needs to flee before the situation escalates. The flashback then shows an exclusive daycare center, renowned for admitting only children from wealthy chaebol families. Inside, at a social event, the man from earlier questions his own presence, as he isn't even married, before hinting at his true motive. Suddenly, he collides with a woman, causing her to exclaim in surprise as her drink is jostled. The red wine dramatically spills from the glass she was holding. With a swift, unseen motion, he slides a ring from her finger as she holds her wine. He quickly apologizes, asking if she's all right, and she replies, relieved that her drink wasn't spilled. Continuing his feigned concern, he explains he was rushing, while she assures him she's unhurt and remarks on the crowd. Walking away, he internally smirks, having pilfered the item right under her nose without her noticing. Admiring the stolen ring, he thinks it's time to head back to his hideout. Unexpectedly, the precious ring slips from his fingers, causing him to gasp. Ah, he utters, watching the ring fall through the air. Desperately, he lunges as the ring bounces across the polished floor, shouting "No." He now confronts the small boy from earlier, certain he saw it land right in front of the child. The boy, tears streaming down his face, sobs and insists, "I swear it wasn't me." While the man observes the child seems genuinely clueless. Realizing the boy's crying will draw unwanted attention, the man decides he must leave immediately, offering a quick sorry for the misunderstanding. As the man hastily departs, still wondering, damn it, where the hell did it go? A woman approaches the still crying child. The woman gently questions the boy, "Who are you? Why are you crying here?" adding, "You're not from our house," while the man, overhearing, looks increasingly worried. Stunned by her words, the man internally questions what did she say, and nervously begins, "Excuse me." The woman then directly asks the flustered man, "Are you his dad?" To which he can only stammer, "I." Internally, he screams, "I'm not his dad," realizing that if he says that, she'll know he snuck in, then weakly suggests, "Well, my kid is somewhere in this house." He thinks, damn, what the hell is this now? Knowing no matter what he says, he can't escape. Just as the boy suddenly exclaims, "Daddy," the small boy then rushes forward, clutching at the man's suit jacket, causing the man to utter a surprised "Ah." Completely taken aback by the boy calling him daddy, the man listens as the child pleads, "Don't leave me behind." With tears streaming down his face, the boy continues, "I'm sorry, I won't ask for any more toys." While the man internally despairs, "Why would I be your dad?" Onlookers whisper among themselves, wondering if he actually abandoned the child or if people intentionally try to sneak into elite kindergartens, though one dismisses the thought. Feigning nonchalance, the man laughs nervously while carrying the boy, exclaiming, "Son, when did I ever say I was leaving you?" and adding that if his son asks for something, he'll naturally buy it. He then urges, "Come on, let's go." As they make their hasty retreat, the scene shifts to a narrow alleyway bathed in the orange glow of the setting sun. Having finally reached a secluded spot, the man, panting heavily, sets the boy down and demands, "Who the hell are you?" The boy, with an innocent yet perplexing gaze, simply asks, "What do you mean?" Frustrated, the man questions, "Why did you say I am your dad?" To which the child calmly replies, "You said so yourself." Utterly bewildered, the man stammers, "Me. When did I?" Looking at the small boy who stands there unfazed. The boy, his bright eyes fixed on the man, then states with certainty, "You were lying." As the man stares in stunned silence, a bead of sweat trickling down his face, the boy declares, "I saw everything." The boy, standing in the alley, asks the man, "Is the game over now?" Referring to the one we were playing, you and me, while the man echoes, "Game." With a wide, cheerful grin, the child exclaims, "It was fun." The man, a bead of sweat on his temple, mutters, "Game, huh?" Then inquires, "Where's your home? Where are your parents?" Looking up with bright eyes, the boy simply states, "I don't have any." He then astutely asks the man, "Aren't you also homeless like me?" Prompting the man to question in surprise, "Homeless? Then where do you live?" The boy gestures vaguely, explaining, "Just go anywhere and do what I did earlier." As a scene of a daycare pickup illustrates his point, he elaborates that until someone else's parents come to pick them up, no one notices, adding, "Nitrogen monoxide, one cares as long as they think someone will come." Suddenly remembering, the boy exclaims, "Oh right," then proudly reveals the stolen ring from his pocket, declaring, "I won the game." The man stares intently at the ring, his expression unreadable, but clearly focused. A dramatic close-up on the man's eye widens in shock as he stammers, This is." The man stares at the glittering jewel held in the boy's small hand, exclaiming, "My ring." Holding the recovered ring, the con artist looks at the child, who then asks with anticipation, "I won, right?" A flashback shows the boy tearfully denying involvement, making the man recall, "He said he didn't know anything just a moment ago." He then considers the child's actions, thinking about him pretending to be a kindergartner and sneaking in. The realization dawns on him that this young boy even fooled the great Go-Il-Nam. With a bright, almost faint smile, the child presents the ring, as the man internally notes, "This kid can't be more than 5 or 6. A bead of sweat forms on the man's temple, as he wonders with a deeply unsettled expression, "Who the hell is he?" The small boy stands before him, innocently offering the ring, his blue eyes looking up. A close-up reveals the boy's surprisingly intense and knowing gaze. The child then poses a chilling question, "You're scared of me too, aren't you?" As the man's eye widens in shock, the man, covering his mouth, internally questions, What kind of face did I just make?" Scared, he then wonders with disbelief of a 5-year-old kid, as a bead of sweat trickles down his face. Facing the small boy, the man admits to himself with a troubled expression, "I'm scared." He acknowledges internally this child's talent, as the boy looks down pensively. A close-up shows the man's mouth as he begins to make an offer. He extends his open hand towards the child. Standing in the alleyway with the sun setting behind them, the man asks the boy, "Want to come with me?" The boy's bright blue eye widens slightly in response to the question. The man's hand gently takes the boy's smaller hand, and the boy thinks that day. Looking slightly flushed, the boy continues his thought, "I gained a family." The man and the boy walked hand in hand, a new bond forming between them. He recalls this man, Go-Il-Nam, as his very first father, a smile gracing Go-Il-Nam's face. However, the boy narrates that there was one crucial detail he was unaware of back then. A creaking sound is heard as the narration ominously hints that aside from Go-Il-Nam, something else was true. It's revealed, as the boy looks up at a new imposing figure flanked by 2 others, that he actually had 3 more fathers. In a separate scene, a different young boy cries desperately, "Mister, please help me. My mom and my little brother." Back with the first boy, he eats with Go-Il-Nam and another man, watching television and asking, "What are those people doing?" To which the man beside him casually replies, "HMO, a movie." Go-Il-Nam then explains to the curious child, "You know that game you like? They're doing that." Go-Il-Nam reassures the crying boy from the earlier scene, patting his head and saying, "So, it's all fake. Just trust me," as the boy tearfully asks if he'll truly help them. The first boy stares with wide, observant eyes at the long-haired man eating across from him, who returns his gaze intently. The long-haired man then asks the boy if he wants to try that too, and the child, eyes wide with surprise, exclaims, "How really?" To which the man confirms, "If you're part of our family, you can totally do it." Enthusiastically, the boy raises his fist, shouting, "I want to," and confidently adding, "I can do it well," while Go-Il-Nam expresses a hint of reservation, "Hey, that's still." A close-up reveals the boy's bright, determined blue eyes sparkling with anticipation. The narrative then shifts to the other young boy under a dim streetlight at night, calling out, "Mister." He looks up at an unseen figure, his voice filled with concern as he continues, "My mom." With tears streaming down his face and hands clasped in desperation, the child implores, "Please help me, my mom and brother." Later, the same boy proudly presents a fan of cash asking, "I did well, right? And that man gave me this too." He extends the money towards the long-haired man, triumphantly stating, he totally fell for it. The long-haired man stares intently as the boy eagerly inquires, when's the next one? What role will I play? A chilling close-up captures the long-haired man's wide, sinister grin. From that day forward, he became fully immersed in the deceptive schemes orchestrated by his fathers. Every single operation they undertook met with success. Eventually, he progressed to planning the elaborate cons himself. A sense of enjoyment came from observing everyone fall for his carefully crafted lies. It felt as though the entire world was under his control. By then, he was no longer just a part of the family, but an integral member of the fraud ring. Suddenly, an angry shout of "damn it" echoed through the room. Han Jun-woo, now older, furiously questioned one of his fathers. I told you not to mess with that one. Why can't you listen, huh? The long-haired man retorted defensively. It's 100 billion. 100 billion. How can I give that up? Huh. I didn't think it would go this far. Go-il Nam, looking anxious, turned to Han Jun-woo, pleading, Ju Jung-woo isn't there anyway? You're the smart one. You know, right? Han Jung-woo reacts with a startled huh. As he's told, there's nothing, just give up. With a hand to his forehead in despair, Han Jung-woo realizes it's all over. The long-haired man grabs Jun-woo, desperately asking if there's a solution, then yelling, I said give up. If we get caught again this time, we're really screwed. Go-il Nam then implores, Jun-woo, please, you're our son. Save your dads, please, huh? Amidst scattered bottles, another voice declares, you think you can just walk away if we go down? We all go down, followed by a frustrated damn it. Go-il Nam places a reassuring hand on Jun-woo's shoulder, advising, don't worry too much, Jun-woo. He continues with a smile, suggesting, maybe it's time for US to retire too. Jun-woo looks down, his hand trembling over Go-il Nam's, thinking, Father. A close-up reveals Han Jun-woo's bright blue eye, filled with a new resolve. His gaze intensifies as he considers, if I get caught, fine, maybe that's better. He mused that he was already sick of scamming anyway, as a prison loomed under a rainy sky. Jun-woo reflected that he started this path without even knowing what it was, but as time passed, one thing filled him, showing a scene of inmates in a cell. That singular feeling, as he looked on with a somber expression, was regret. He considered regret a useless emotion, the view focusing on a barred cell door window. Inside a cell, he admitted he was just sick of it all, tired of fathers blinded by greed. Collapsed in a dark, confined space, he thought about a life constantly on the run. With a weary expression, he conceded, yeah, this is the end now. His eyes closed, a sense of finality washing over his tired face. Suddenly, his bright blue eyes snapped open as a voice urgently called out, son. A man's face, contorted in a shout, appeared with desperate urgency. Suddenly, a hand yanked Jun-woo forward by his shirt as he sat in a chair. His bright blue eyes widened in shock as he exclaimed, WH what the? Before him, a glistening piece of fried chicken seemed to be the cause of the commotion. Go-il Nam was on the floor, clutching the chicken, while another father figure pulled him back, shouting, Dad did it again. Jun-woo's eye twitched slightly as he uttered a soft ah. Both Go-il Nam and the other man burst into laughter, with Go-il Nam proudly declaring, at least I protected the chicken drumstick. While Jun-woo thought, Dad. As Jun-woo sat composedly, Go-il Nam encouraged him, eat up. You'll be in high school soon. So eat while you can, prompting Jun-woo to wonder, huh? What do you mean by that? The realization struck him, and he looked up, hands raised in disbelief, questioning. I'm going to be a high schooler. A whiteboard detailed their next plan involving Sian-woo Middle School's principal, a contract, and Jun-woo making contact after they disguised themselves as gangsters. The long-haired man stood by the whiteboard, explaining the intricacies of their upcoming operation. Han Jun-woo sat at the table, arms crossed, listening intently to the unfolding plan. He remained silent, his expression thoughtful as the details were laid out. One of his fathers gestured emphatically towards the whiteboard, exclaiming, Hey, Han Jun-woo, are you listening? While Jun-woo seemed to ponder the information, Jun-woo's internal monologue focused on Sian-woo Middle School as he processed the target. He then recalled, the principal, so, is this that incident from about 20 years ago? The plan involved Jun-woo accompanying the principal to the Incheon hotel, the explanation being that if the son of the contract partner attends his school, it will build trust. Subsequently, the principal would be made to sign the fake contract that Jun-woo had prepared. After that, they would move to a location where VIPs gather, where Jang Geun-won and Park Hyung-sik, disguised as gangsters, would be waiting, prompting the principal to want to cancel the contract. Since the principal wouldn't want word getting out that he's linked to gangsters, they would then demand money as a contract termination fee. The father figure, having finished the explanation, looked towards Jun-woo and the others asking, That's the plan, right? Go Il-nam, surprised, internally praises his son's talent for scheming. Even as another father figure chides Jung-woo, You brat, that's the plan. What kind of tone is that, punk? As Jung-woo gets up, stating he doesn't have a big role and will back out first. One man remarks he thought Jung-woo was just going through puberty due to his strange behavior, while the long-haired man asks, Hey, don't you know your son by now? The long-haired man's eye glints as he observes that the moment Jung-woo spots an opportunity, he charges like a beast. One of the men at the table then asks, Now that I think about it, what happened with that thing last time? Did you catch them? To which another replies, Oh, that was over a long time ago. From behind a slightly ajar door, Jung-woo listens intently to their conversation. The door creaks as he continues to eavesdrop on the men's discussion. Inside the bathroom, water streams from the faucet into the sink. Jung-woo, standing before the bathroom mirror, realizes with dawning horror, as expected, what I just heard was also something we did in the past. I've been thinking about it constantly the past few days. A stark realization hits him as the words I've returned to the past fill his mind. Staring at his younger reflection, he processes the unbelievable truth. 35 years of life, and now, back as a middle schooler at this moment. He acknowledges that both his past life and this current situation are reality. And since he's returned to the past, Jung-woo determines he can't live the same life again. But then a problem arises. The long-haired man enters the bathroom, calling out Han Jung-woo. He presents a document to Jung-woo explaining it concerns the job scheduled for next week. As Jung-woo accepts the papers, the man remarks that this particular task carries significant weight and he believed Jung-woo could manage it independently now. Jung-woo's eye focuses intently as the man stresses it's an important assignment, and furthermore, the man adds with a grave expression that it's also perilous that instructs him to pay attention. With a fierce, almost intimidating gaze, the man asserts that none of the jobs they undertake are without danger. Jung-woo silently observes, as expected of Jang Jun-won. He considers that Jang Jun-won always has an escape route prepared if things go awry. Noticing a plan for a ship near Incheon Sampu port for Jang Jun-won, and in addition, he mentally lists Kim Gwang-soo, Lee Si-jae, and Go Il-nam, totaling for people, then firmly thinks, I'm not one of them. Jung-woo calmly examines the document Jang Jun-won handed him in the bathroom. Jang Jun-won, with a knowing look, then asks him, Are you scared now? Jung-woo replies with a slight smirk, Nitrogen monoxide way. I've been doing fine. He internally notes that this time, it's simply because the school principal is involved that he has to attend school. As a photo of the principal is shown on the whiteboard, Jang Jun-won cautions him, Don't show your face outside too much. Don't make unnecessary friends. As they stand by the bathroom door, Jang Jun-won adds a final, Remember this. We're the only ones who will take you in. Jung-woo reflects, In my past life, I orchestrated countless operations to perfection. He continues his thought, Not a single one failed after passing through my hands. As an image shows him holding a mask above scenes of his successful deceptions before adding, If there's one thing that did fail, the narration concludes, it was the desires of the fathers. As Jang Jun-won is depicted as a puppet master controlling Jung-woo, who thinks, They brainwashed me for their own profit. Jung-woo considered that perhaps this was part of why they didn't want him exposed, seeing him only as a source of money. A flashback shows a very young Jung-woo sitting alone in a dimly lit room, watching television. He realized they were also afraid he might get other ideas and try to escape. However, Jung-woo remembered there was one person who truly cared, as Go Il-nam had once told him he shouldn't walk the same road and could quit anytime. In a past memory, a younger Jung-woo, holding his jacket, angrily asked Go Il-nam, I said I don't want to. Why do you keep saying that stuff? He continued, I like this job. Why won't you let me do what I want? As Go Il-nam looked on with a somber expression, the younger Jung-woo then tearfully questioned, Hate me, Dad. While Go Il-nam looked down sadly, Jung-woo, walking away from Go Il-nam in a stark white space, narrates that he didn't understand it back then. Looking up towards Go Il-nam's distant figure, he now understood that his father had said those things to protect him. In a cafe setting, Go Il-nam suggested to Jung-woo that there are other roads in life, like being a regular office worker or a counselor, given his son's eloquence. Go Il-nam enthusiastically suggests, right, an actor. How about acting? He beams, adding with a laugh, You love acting. Jung-woo, with a slight smile, internally reflects, That's right, I hadn't thought of that before. Go Il-nam then calls out, Son, towards Jung-woo who stands in the bathroom doorway holding papers. Noticing his demeanor, Go Il-nam cheerfully asks, You seem down, want to go eat some meat? Over a bubbling pot of anchovy stew, Go Il-nam exclaims with a laugh, Wahaha. So, you finally understand the beauty of anchovy stew. He then remarks to Junwoo, who sits across from him at a restaurant table. You used to hate it so much. Junwoo looks down pensively, his blue eyes fixed on the table before him. Go Il-nam places his chopsticks and spoon down, then gently prods, so son, you have something to say, don't you? A close-up focuses on Junwoo's jaw and the collar of his school uniform. As he considers his father's words, Junwoo addresses Go Il-nam, saying, Dad, to which Go Il-nam responds, yeah? With a serious expression, Junwoo then declares, I'm going to die. At what appears to be an airport or large terminal, an instructor shouts for everyone to line up in 3 rows, specifically calling for Class 2 and asking about Class 3, while students mill about. The instructor, looking displeased, mutters ugh and complains. It's the first day of the retreat and the weather is like this. Holding a stick, the instructor turns and calls out, Han Junwoo, aren't you coming? As Junwoo stands apart from the group, Junwoo turns, responding with a somewhat cheerful yes tilt. The instructor, now facing Junwoo who is looking at his phone, asks, is everyone from class to hear? And reminds them, once we arrive, you still have to listen carefully to the instructor. A close-up of Junwoo's phone screen displays a message from Dad reading, take care and have a good trip. Junwoo looks down at his phone with a slight, thoughtful smile. The instructor then urges, okay, there's nitrogen monoxide time, everyone, on the bus quickly. Adding that upon arrival, they will form 3 lines just as they are doing now, with a view of a bus on a road near the airport terminal. Rain pours down on a building complex near the water, setting a somber mood. Inside, a plain door with a digital lock is shown, hinting at a private or restricted area. A man sitting on a couch scratches his head, muttering, seriously, these brats are always such a hassle when they come. Before adding, well, still. He then leans over a cardboard box, a pleased grin spreading across his face as he says, this is what makes it worth it. The box reveals several bottles of alcohol, prompting him to remark, ugh. They don't even know how to drink, yet they want to try the good stuff. With a sinister smile, he contemplates, should I drink with Teacher Yoil today? Or maybe with Teacher Hyunsu for the first time in a while? A sudden loud sound from the door startles him, causing him to jump as a shadowy figure appears in the doorway. He looks up, a bead of sweat on his temple with a questioning expression. Han Junwoo stands there exuding annoyance and declares, oh fuck, really getting on my nerves. Then angrily demands, who the hell are you, barging in here? The man, flustered, points at Junwoo, exclaiming, you, while Junwoo retorts, you're calling someone you in front of the instructor. Until the head teacher told you to get lost. Han Junwoo, looking quite irritated, declared he didn't feel like sleeping with the other kids and would just nap there for a bit. The man, visibly angered by Junwoo's dismissive tone, stepped forward demanding, what did you say? Punk, what's your name? What class are you from? He then grabbed Junwoo by the collar, threatening to teach him a lesson before calling his homeroom teacher. To which Junwoo merely scoffed, ha. A close-up showed the man's teeth gritted in fury as he hissed, this. With a furious shout of you son of a bitch, the man violently shoved Junwoo, sending him sprawling to the floor as his name tag flew off. Lying on the ground, Junwoo internally seethed, you dare lay a filthy hand on me? The man looked down, somewhat taken aback, as Junwoo calmly questioned from the floor. You said you were calling the teacher. A bead of sweat appeared on the man's temple, his eyes wide with unease, while Junwoo coolly wondered if they'd actually be able to come. Junwoo recalled that not long ago, this very man had been thoroughly beaten by his dad and uncles, prompting the man to think with growing alarm, what is with this kid? Revealing a glimpse of a tattoo on his shoulder, Junwoo stared intently at the man and dared him. Go ahead, fucking call him. The man, looking down at Junwoo, wondered what kind of middle schooler has tattoos and if his family was involved with the mob. A subtle smirk played on Junwoo's lips as he lay on the floor. Now seated on the couch, Junwoo advised the man not to act tough and to just leave. Or go ahead and call a teacher if he wished. Visibly flustered, the man stated he didn't know Junwoo's name but would find out by asking for class to his homeroom. Teacher, muttering you bastard. He then stormed out, ordering Junwoo to just wait right here, while Junwoo calmly watched him depart. Junwoo, with a composed expression, reflected that it had been easier than he anticipated. He sat comfortably on the couch beside the box of alcohol, his name tag Han Junwoo clearly visible. A faint, knowing smile touched the corner of Junwoo's mouth. Several bottles of soju and some packs of cigarettes were visible inside or near the open box. Down the hallway, the man walked with another individual, remarking that Junwoo wasn't the type of student to cause trouble and was actually super quiet in class. The man insisted, I'm telling you, he said his dad's in the mob or something. He even had tattoos. But the other countered, if that were true, we'd have seen it in pay class, then suggested, let's just go check the duty room. Bursting into the room, the man who had confronted Jungwoo earlier shouted, Han Jungwoo. They found the room empty, with alcohol and cigarettes on the table, prompting the question, where did he go? The other man, noticing the lingering scent, asked suspiciously, there's a smell of alcohol. Did you drink in here? Flustered, the first man denied it, and no, I didn't even look at the alcohol, then pointed, over there. His finger indicated the table where the alcohol and cigarettes lay, evidence of someone's recent presence. A close-up highlighted the open pack of cigarettes and several cans of beer on the coffee table. The second man, trying to de-escalate, said, we know, instructor. We know you didn't drink. While the instructor insisted, nitrogen monoxide, really? The instructor then looked out the window at the pouring rain, his reflection showing a troubled expression. The other man suggested, let's just find out where he went first. As the rain continued to fall on the building, Han Jungwoo looks back over his shoulder, standing alone as rain pours down around him. A distant view shows him as a solitary, illuminated figure on a cliff edge overlooking a dark, stormy sea. He gazes upwards, rain streaking down, a faint glow highlighting him against the turbulent sky. The declaration, the play we prepared is now over. This is the final part. Appears over the scene of the cliff and crashing waves. Standing at the precipice, Jungwoo reflects, I thought I'd feel relieved. A close-up on his red sneaker near the edge is accompanied by the thought, but even if I tease a lie. Standing at the end leaves a strange feeling. Intertwined film strips fill the frame as he considers. I believed I'd been living inside a movie all this time, but looking back, I was just a con man, scamming people and a criminal. His figure walks along an illuminated film strip, his back to the viewer as he thinks, if I stay here, I'll only repeat the same life again. The stark white space contains the solemn words, that's WHY. Today marks the end of Han Jungwoo's 35-year life. A hand tilts a dark liquor bottle, a single drop falling from its spout. Standing in the downpour, Jungwoo closes his eyes, thinking it's the perfect day to die. A tear escapes his eye as a voice suddenly exclaims, found you? To figures holding umbrellas spot Han Jungwoo on the cliff, one of them yelling, Han Jungwoo, what the hell are you doing up there? Jungwoo looks down with a somber expression, a single tear visible on his cheek. One of the men, shining a flashlight, sprints towards the precipice, shouting for him to get down from the dangerous spot. From above, Jungwoo is seen on the cliff edge, the two figures below. As he decides this is enough and it's time to end everything, his red sneaker takes a deliberate step closer to the brink of the cliff. The two men watch in horror as Jungwoo stands with arms outstretched, ready to sever ties from the fathers. He then plummets from the cliff, appearing to fall off a reel of film. As the narration continues and from, a hand reaches towards a twisting film strip, signifying his desire to escape the past where he lived like a total wreck. Outside a school building, someone exclaims in frustration, ran away again, calling them damn pests like them, and mentioning they even doubled their appearance fee because they came from far away. In a hallway, one man asks another, the performance is only 5 hours away. What should we do? To which the other replies, what do you mean, what should we do? First, refund the ticket prices, and also to check the lodging and transportation costs too and send them to me. The man in the red checkered shirt angrily suggests, this time, let's sue for damages, then dismisses the idea, wondering, forget it. How much money could actors who perform in small theaters like this have, anyway? As the man in the checkered shirt walks off instructing to check the customer info, and send them each a personal apology text. Keep it brief, don't explain too much. The other man scratches his head, thinking, our CEO is really he's too kind for his own good. A close-up on the CEO's face reveals his thought. They say trust is important in business, damn it. While the other man muses, other than that, he's a really good guy. The CEO, Ju Mansik, narrates, Ju Mansik, was a member of the National Assembly just 5 years ago, adding, even at the young age of 45, I was recognized and doing pretty well. But maybe that's what became my downfall, as a flashback shows him in a podium. He recalls, there were so many people around me trying to profit off of me. Depicted by two figures with glowing eyes, one holding a briefcase overflowing with cash. His narration continues, even the people I trusted all betrayed me in the end. As his solitary figure stands under a spotlight, he remembers being caught up in endless power struggles day after day, illustrated by two shadowy figures whispering and plotting, before stating, when I finally came to my senses. Newspaper headlines scream Assemblyman Mansik involved in bribery, and Assemblyman Ju Mansik scandal as he concludes, What remained was fabricated corruption, and the overwhelming sense of isolation as everyone turned their backs on me. The only path forward for him was to abandon the corrupt world of politics. His first confident business endeavor involved wiping sweat from his brow, a hand stain with what looked like blood. This initial venture was the construction of a small theater, but 5 years later, managing it proved to be quite challenging. Initially, the theater performed quite well, attracting crowds despite its modest size and countryside location. Instead of pursuing well-known actors, their strategy for the small theater was to cast talented newcomers who hadn't yet had their chance to shine. He understood well that an actor's name is often what first captures an audience's attention, as seen in a newspaper headline about a famous actor guaranteeing box office success. For Nemo Theater, however, the true quality of a play is not determined by an actor's fame, as illustrated by an empty stage viewed from the audience. It's more about how effectively they embody their roles, as he sat thoughtfully in the empty theater seats, and how deeply they can move the audience. That's precisely why he concentrated on talented newcomers, who were often overshadowed by bigger names, watching a young actor perform passionately on stage. Consequently, they gained recognition as a theater that discovered hidden gems. Though this success unfortunately did not last long, the aspiring actors, their backs to the viewer, faced a future where their dreams were firmly set in Seoul. Consequently, as soon as these actors began to gain popularity, they invariably moved on to larger theater companies in Seoul. This marked the third instance of such a departure, leading Ju Man-sik to dejectedly wonder if the problem lay with him or the world itself. As he walked through the theater hallway, Ju Man-sik heard indistinct sounds coming from behind one of the theater doors. He surmised he must have forgotten to turn off the stage equipment before his earlier conversation with the assistant director. Peeking through a crack in the door, he cautiously considered what might be happening inside. Within the empty theater, a lone young man sat watching the brightly illuminated stage. Engrossed in the silent performance, Ju Man-sik recognized the figure, thinking to himself that, as expected, the kid who had been lurking around lately, seemingly a high schooler, was there again. He observed the boy, noting the oddly unfitting work uniform he wore, which seemed out of place for someone his apparent age. Despite the boy's mysterious presence, Ju Man-sik recalled that he consistently left a few bills as payment after watching. Ju Man-sik, leaning out of a ticket booth, mused that a small, insignificant theater like theirs doesn't even have regulars, then wondered if this boy was perhaps their only one. Inside the theater, Ju Man-sik approached the seated boy and asked, "What's your name?" The boy simply replied, "Name? I don't have one of those." Ju Man-sik, looking at the boy who sat calmly in the theater seat, wondered if he just didn't want to reveal his name. An irked expression crossed Ju Man-sik's face as he thought that, even the neighborhood mutt has a name. He then inquired about the boy's age, noting he looked like a high schooler and asking if he attended school, to which the boy, now standing, replied he was 17 but didn't go to school. The boy, facing Ju Man-sik, then apologized, explaining that since nothing was said, he assumed it was all right to watch. As the boy turned to leave, Ju Man-sik, surprised, called out "WH what?" then asked if he had scolded him, trying to clarify that he meant something else. The boy paused, turning back with a slight look of realization, and uttered, "All right." He then extended a folded bill towards Ju Man-sik, who looked at it and asked, "What is it?" The boy stated, "I really enjoyed IT today too," while offering the money, adding, "IT was a bit disappointing, it got cut off in the middle though." Ju Man-sik, surprised, exclaimed, "Hey, when did I ever ask you for money?" He then reached out and grabbed the boy's arm, his expression shifting to concern. Focusing on the boy's wrist, Ju Man-sik asked with evident worry, "Your wrist, did you get hurt?" The boy reassured him, "It's fine. I'll put on some pain relief patch at home and get some sleep." Ju Man-sik looked down at the boy's hand, still concerned, as the boy added, "But thank you for worrying." The boy then looked up at Ju Man-sik with a calm, unreadable expression. Turning to depart, the boy announced, "I'll be going now." Ju Man-sik quickly called after him, "Wait, are you only interested in plays?" prompting the boy to glance back with a questioning look. Flustered, Ju Man-sik began, "There are more recorded plays and scripts inside," before trailing off with, "Nitrogen monoxide, I mean." Ju Man-sik, scratching his head, worries that his offer sounds like a creepy guy offering candy to kids. As the boy stands by the door, the boy looks back with a questioning expression, a bead of sweat on his temple. Ju Man-sik then suggests the boy just come in, get treated quickly, and then leave. As the boy hesitates before opening the door, the boy glances back with a serious, thoughtful expression before fully entering. Later, at a restaurant, Ju Man-sik remarks he thought the boy would ignore him and leave. Ju Man-sik observes the boy eating, commenting that he must have been hungry. sitting across from the boy at the table. Mansick explains that the boy just reminded him of someone, then asked why he does that kind of work, noting the food is bland. The boy, while eating, replies that everyone has their own circumstances. As Mansick observes, he's still young and decent looking, suggesting better jobs exist. The boy continues eating, his expression unreadable. Mansick holds up some papers, asking what's that, while the boy, mid-chew, looks up with a questioning HM. The boy holds up a rolled-up script titled The Chance Encounter, clarifying, "Oh, this." He explains to Mansick, who is looking at the title, "It's a script I just got." Mansick, appearing interested, inquires, "Curious, give it a read," and gestures for the boy to take the papers. The boy accepts the script, examining it and thinking, "So this is a script." A page from the script reveals dialogue, "Jying, in life, are you drawn to kind people? People you can talk to easily, or tall people?" Followed by a scene note, "While walking to school together, Jying, Heeju, and Yujin say, what's your ideal type?" Mansick observes the boy as he reads, and the boy thoughtfully utters, "HMM." The boy continues to peruse the script, while Mansick watches him with keen attention. As the boy turns a page of the script, Mansick's expression shifts to one of focused, slight surprise. Mansick abruptly takes the script back, declaring, "That's enough." He states, "It's unreleased, so I can't show you all of it," while his internal thought is, "I thought, what would a country kid know?" Mansick internally admitted he'd shown the script impulsively, only to snatch it back when the boy became deeply engrossed. He then wondered if he'd been too careless, as the boy, holding the script titled The Chance Encounter, politely thanked him for the read. Slightly deflated by the mild reaction, Mansick pressed, "You only saw a little. But what do you think? Think it'll do well?" The boy humbly replied he wasn't sure what he knew, prompting Mansick to passionately defend the script, stating he poured his heart into it and received it from a meticulous, perfectionist writer, assuring there wasn't a single wasted word. After a moment of silence from the boy, Mansick questioned if his lack of enthusiasm stemmed from it being a romance. The boy clarified it wasn't that, but rather he was unsure if the play suited Mansick's particular theater. Mansick, perplexed, asked what he meant by "my theater," and the boy directed him to the second line on the script's first page. Repeating second line of the first page, Mansick began to flip through the script to find the indicated part. He read aloud the stage direction and dialogue about characters entering with umbrellas and discussing ideal types, then muttered a side comment about one character's lack of a consistent type. Continuing to read, Mansick's eyes widened as the script described another character entering, prompting a friend to point out "your boyfriend," leading Mansick to think with dawning realization, "What the? This kid?" Mansick stared in disbelief, wondering if the boy had actually memorized the lines and stage directions, muttering what? The boy, without looking up from his meal, perfectly recited a passage from the script detailing Kyung-soo's reveal from under an umbrella, startling the other characters. A thought flashed through Mansick's mind that the boy hadn't even looked at the script. For a full minute, he continued to quote the script flawlessly, reiterating the lines about Kyung-soo lifting his umbrella and the other's surprise. Looking at the boy who was calmly eating, Mansick internally noted that it had barely been a minute since he'd seen the script. A bead of sweat on his temple, Mansick questioned how this observation related to his theater. The boy then pointed to the script, referencing the scene where characters meet under umbrellas, to which Mansick acknowledged with an okay. He astutely pointed out that if 3 characters walked while talking, they'd need about 20 steps, but Mansick's stage was only 13 steps wide. Gesturing, the boy further explained that the umbrellas would obscure the characters in shadow, even with good lighting, and the main character's dramatic entrance would also be hidden. To remedy this, he suggested changing the setting from a walk to school to a bus stop, which would allow characters to remain stationary without cutting dialogue. As Mansick listened intently, the boy further elaborated that while they're talking, the guy appears holding an umbrella, then points it toward the audience to briefly block the character from view, building up curiosity. He concluded, while taking a bite of food, that in the end, it should look dramatic to the audience. Mansick, looking flustered, dismissed it with an odd "just ignore me," adding he just thought it might be a bit of work. The boy continued to eat his meal, seemingly unfazed by Mansick's reaction. Mansick then pushed the script back towards the boy, who was still eating, asking, "Want to keep going?" When the boy questioned with what, Mansick clarified he meant what the boy was just saying, expressing he wanted to hear about the other parts too. The boy paused his meal and took the script from Mansick's hand. He then began to flip through the pages of the script once more. Mansick watched him intently, his chin resting on his hand, a thoughtful expression on his face. A close-up on Mansick's mouth accompanied his internal thought that the things this kid casually said were shocking. Mansik internally listed the boy's considerations: the stage layout, the movement lines, angles visible from the audience's perspective, and the actor's positioning. He continued to ponder the boy's grasp of the timing for adjusting the brightness of the lights. As they sat in the restaurant, the boy, holding the script, had even considered the temperature of the lighting and its positioning, not to mention the precise seconds of pauses and breathing between lines. Mansik realized that even things that would be impossible to analyze one by one, with a team of professionals, were being addressed by the boy. A bead of sweat trickled down Mansik's temple as the depth of the boy's understanding became apparent. He marveled that all these complex elements were being perfectly tailored to his theater and stage. Just from this kid's words, the script titled "A Chance Encounter" was pushed back towards the boy across the table. Stunned, Mansik began to speak, uttering, "You?" He then questioned the boy. "When did you start learning directing? Seems like you were properly trained at a theater group. Where were you? The reason you were looking at the recording in the theater is because you designed the storyboard yourself, right?" To which the boy replied with a surprised huh. Mansik pressed further, "Are you working in something related to that now?" And the boy, looking slightly abashed, answered, "No, I'm sorry." The boy confesses, "I actually saw a play for the first time here just recently." As Mansik looks on, a tear of disbelief in his eye, he elaborates, "I originally wanted to see a movie, but there's no movie theater in this area," prompting Mansik to ask, "So this was your first time watching a play?" Mansik's hand is shown in a close-up, trembling slightly as he processes this revelation. Mansik internally calculates, "I first saw this kid about 3 weeks ago. That means this little punk who's just now starting high school mastered the feel of the entire stage in just 3 weeks." Covering his mouth in shock, Mansik sits, thinking, a play isn't just about the actors performing on a stage. To actors perform. As Mansik's thought continues, ordinary people might think it's just about acting. Another scene shows actors in a dramatic pose with the text, but in reality, it's much more. The words writer, art, music, lighting, directing appear on screen, listing the various elements. A backstage crew is depicted working diligently, illustrating that it's a comprehensive art form created by professionals from many fields. Mansik, looking at the boy across the table, marvels internally, but this kid, just by skimming through the script, handled it all by himself. Mansik reflects that the boy has only been watching plays for a mere 3 weeks. As the boy continues eating, he then wonders if 3 weeks ago was truly the boy's first time. What about rewriting the dialogue? The boy pauses mid-bite, spoon halfway to his mouth, looking up with a slight startle. Mansik, holding the script, suggests they try to rebuild it based on what the boy has said. Internally, Mansik desires to see a little more, not just stage direction, but if the boy can provide answers for the crucial aspects of roles and acting. The boy, with his arms crossed, thoughtfully utters, "HMM." He then states he can't do it because he doesn't know who the actors are. While Mansik internally concedes that's asking too much, as dialogue and directing are different. As Mansik muses it depends on skill, the boy, stirring his food, interjects that it's not that. The boy elaborates that one must observe a person's life to understand them, including habits that can't be hidden by acting or stiffened facial muscles. He concludes that without knowing such details, it's impossible, adding that each person also pronounces letters with different vibrations and pitches. Mansik internally exclaims that the boy isn't a machine, and questions how a person could possibly account for all those details before conceding, but he acknowledges, "I know IT." Mansik admits to himself, "I'm just trying to deny IT because the truth is hard to accept." The boy then advises Mansik, "Try smiling in the mirror sometime later." Continuing his observation, the boy explains, "Your pupils get a little bigger when you smile without realizing IT. It's perfect for playing a murderer." Mansik, utterly stunned by this assessment, can only utter, "WHAT." The boy then casually states, "Just kidding," as he gets up from the table with a slight smirk. Mansik, hand to his chin, internally marvels he's not only great at stage and directing. This kid really is. The boy, now standing, asks Mansik, "Aren't you leaving?" Then adds, "Then I'll go first." As he departs, the boy says, "Thank you for the food," leaving a stunned Mansik at the table. Mansik lets out a laugh, admitting he feels as though he's been bewitched. He ponders where on earth this kid came from, still having so many questions. Yet he figures he'll probably see him again tomorrow anyway. The scene transitions to a construction site, where a voice off-panel asks, "What the whose kid are you?" In what appears to be an office, Jun-woo announces he's there to collect his money, while an unseen individual questions if they ever left any money with him. Jun-woo, extending his hand confidently, affirms, "Yes, you did," prompting the other person to exclaim in disbelief, "What did you say?" Standing before two men, Junwoo reminds them they promised to pay him later, and now demands the precise sum of 587,000 won. One of the men, looking irate, calls Junwoo a little brat and a punk, as another man in the background sneers that later means never, and that Junwoo must be too young to understand how the world works. Junwoo calmly inquires if they intend not to give him the money, to which the aggressive man retorts, "Of course not, punk. I don't have that kind of money." With a resigned sigh, Junwoo concludes he isn't getting paid, reflecting that he had offered them one final opportunity, but had previously let it slide once or twice to avoid trouble. A flashback depicts an envelope of cash changing hands. As the narration explains, they would offer various excuses, such as times are tough or that such issues are inevitable with more workers. Junwoo, holding a cup, internally questioned if these men even realized who they were confronting. He figured they probably assumed he wouldn't retaliate due to his youth and lack of parents. Furthermore, Junwoo was certain they had been skimming wages from other workers as well. A flashback showing one of the men gleefully handling cash. He observed how easily they manipulated and dismissed other workers, realizing it was their standard practice. Nevertheless, a practical concern surfaced in Junwoo's mind, but still, where can I find another job now? His expression hardened as he looked at the men, a sharp thought, "What the hell, you bastards?" flashing through his mind. Just then, a different man burst into the office, furiously demanding, "You shorted my pay." Meanwhile, in the empty theater, Mansik sat alone, pondering, why isn't he coming today? With his arms crossed, Mansik sighed, noting it was already past the time Junwoo usually arrived, when suddenly a voice called out, "Boss." An employee approached Mansik, who then asked where a 17-year-old might be. The employee suggested school, but Mansik clarified Junwoo didn't attend and instead worked at a construction site. Mansik's employee suggests they check the construction site, but Mansik, seated in the theater, initially questions what he's talking about. The employee reminds his boss that he just mentioned Junwoo works at a construction site, so he must be there now. With a sudden realization, Mansik exclaims, "That's it," and dashes off, while his employee calls after him, "Wait a minute, boss. You have a meeting to attend." Mansik runs through the rain, chiding himself, right? Why didn't I think of that? Since he said he works at a construction site, he should be there. He pants heavily, clearly exerting himself in his rush. Arriving at a large, multi-level construction area, Mansik wonders aloud, is this the place? He approaches a small, prefabricated office building on the site. Hearing indistinct voices coming from inside, Mansik carefully pushes the door open slightly, peering into the office. He then throws the door open wide, shouting with outrage, "What? They paid you less." Inside, Junwoo stands calmly as one of the foremen is splayed over a table, another looking on in shock, exclaiming, "Sir," while also stating, "This area is off-limits to unauthorized personnel." Mansik furiously berates the men. "You have nothing better to do than to cheat a kid out of his money. You should be ashamed of yourselves." He then violently flips the table, shouting, "You filthy bastards," as the foreman exclaims, What are you doing, sir?" Junwoo, calmly touching his ear, states, "I'm going to report all of you to the labor department." Mansik turns to Junwoo, demanding, "What are you standing there for?" Grabbing Junwoo's arm, Mansik exclaims, "Let's go. Why waste time dealing with scum like this?" While one of the foremen on the floor groans, "UGHO nitrogen monoxide, my money." The scene shifts to the exterior of a modern building under a bright blue sky. Junwoo, looking troubled, thinks to himself, "Damn, those sons of bitches." Inside an office, Mansik questions Junwoo, "Why are you even putting up with that crap? Why are you sulfur monoxide angry?" Mansik continues, "Aren't you upset? You should get paid. Should I report them and have them all arrested?" To which Junwoo calmly asks, "Why would you do that?" Leaning back, Mansik lectures, "Kid, if an adult offers help, you should say thank you, instead of talking back." Mansik, with a determined glint in his eye, seemed to have an idea. He looked at Junwoo, whose bandaged wrist rested on his lap as he sat quietly. Then Mansik firmly suggested, "Stop doing that kind of work and just work here." A bead of sweat appeared on Mansik's temple as he uttered a soft ah, perhaps realizing the implications of his offer. Tapping his phone, Mansik then mused aloud, "Come to think of it, how much did we lose last month?" While Junwoo listened from the couch, Mansik looked up from his phone, questioning with a simple why. He elaborated, "Well, if you work here, you can watch plays you like, isn't that good?" Junwoo, with a direct gaze, then inquired, "Why are you helping me?" Mansik, looking away slightly, quickly clarified, "I'm not helping you, kid. Coincidentally, a part-timer quit, so I'm looking for someone." Junwoo bluntly asked, "Give a lot of money, sir?" You always seem stressed. Doesn't look like you have money to pay me, as Mansik clutched his chest, looking flustered. Mansik, with a bead of sweat, then questioned Junwoo, "Why? Are you worried I'll cheat you out of your pay?" Junwoo simply affirmed, "Yes," prompting an irked Mansik to internally exclaim, "You little." Mansik then vehemently declared, "Even if I have to work at the construction site in your place, I'll make sure you get paid." A determined expression settled on Mansik's face as a flashback to yesterday began. Mansik recalled his earlier encounter, thinking, "I can't remember all the things this kid said, and they're still unprovable, but the emotions from that time still linger." A close-up on Mansik's eye revealed his firm conviction, "I can't let a kid like him work on a construction site." As Junwoo sat alone, bathed in a soft light, Mansik's internal monologue continued. "Everyone has a place where they belong. Honestly, IT's a loss for me right now, but even so, I want to keep him by my side." Junwoo looked up, his bright blue eyes meeting Mansik's gaze, silently processing the offer. Back in the present, Mansik, in his office, then casually remarked, "By the way, about what you said earlier." Junwoo, seated on the couch with his hands clasped, inquired, "Do part-timers also get to watch plays?" The sun sets over the theater building where Mansik now employs Junwoo. Inside, Mansik waits impatiently by a pillar, wondering why Junwoo hasn't come out yet. A bead of sweat forms on Mansik's temple as he considers if Junwoo is perhaps more meticulous than he initially thought. He recalls that it's been a week since Junwoo started working there, and earlier, he'd asked him to simply tidy up the somewhat messy basement rehearsal room. Mansik notes with growing impatience that it has already been 3 hours since he gave Junwoo the task. An irk mark appears on Mansik's forehead as his annoyance builds. Descending the stairs, Mansik wonders if Junwoo is OCD, thinking that even so, tidying shouldn't take more than an hour, and he had planned to have a meal with him. Reaching the rehearsal room area, Mansik calls out, "Hey, how long are you going to?" Upon entering, Mansik stops short, surprised, asking, What is all this?" As he sees Junwoo sitting amidst neatly organized scripts and equipment. Junwoo, looking up, points towards a shelf and begins to explain, "Oh, that fell over, so," referring to the shelf where the scripts were placed. Mansik observes the scripts strewn on the floor before the bookshelf. Deducing he can imagine the sequence of events, he surmises that during the organization process the shelf toppled, causing the scripts to scatter. And in that fleeting moment, Junwoo became entirely engrossed, prompting a soft laugh from Mansik. However, his attention is drawn to a neatly arranged stack of scripts resting on a small wooden stool beside an ornate cabinet. Taken in the room, complete with props like artificial red flowers and a director's chair, Mansik inquires what Junwoo was occupied with. Junwoo, clutching a script, clarifies he merely wished to read it once. When Mansik seeks confirmation, "Read it." The script, Junwoo affirms, "Yes, I just read it with my eyes," gesturing towards the scripts on the table and the general state of the room. Mansik wonders why Junwoo didn't simply read it and queries if he was perhaps rehearsing by himself. Mansik's gaze narrows on the script in Junwoo's hand, which bears the title The Seagull, leading him to ask, "A Russian play?" He then questions the choice of that specific play when numerous Korean scripts were available, to which Junwoo states he has already perused all of those, eliciting a surprise "What?" from Mansik. Pointing towards his own ear in utter disbelief as Junwoo reiterates, "I've read." Mansik appears completely taken aback. A close-up on Mansik's eye reveals his profound astonishment as Junwoo specifies, he has read everything that was tiddily organized in that area. Mansik, with a glowing purple aura around his question, incredulously asks if Junwoo truly read all of the scripts contained within the large bookshelf. He then connects this to Junwoo's current activity, asking if that's the reason he was reading a Russian script. Amidst the scattered papers on the table, Mansik further questions Junwoo, who is holding the open Russian script. "Do you even speak Russian?" Junwoo, holding the script in one hand, points with the other and replies, "Nitrogen monoxide, that." Mansik's gaze follows Junwoo's gesture to a book on the shelf, prompting him to ask, "A Russian dictionary?" As Mansik voices his skepticism that a dictionary is only good for looking up words, Junwoo explains, "I looked up a few words, and I could more or less get the gist of it." Mansik's eye widens in disbelief as he exclaims, "What?" and internally wonders, "What is this?" Looking at Junwoo standing amidst the organized scripts, Mansik internally questions if the boy truly arranged all this just from recognizing a few words. Mansik stares at the open pages of the Russian play The Seagull that Junwoo is holding. He then internally reflects on the book Junwoo is reading, recalling, "I studied that script countless times in the past myself." Mansik internally noted, that the scene Jung-woo was currently looking at depicted the moment before the character erupts in anger, overturning objects in his room. Observing the scattered props again, Man-sik realized they weren't just randomly thrown around. He understood that Jung-woo had meticulously arranged them to reflect the character's emotional state. Man-sik marveled at how perfectly the boy had captured the character's emotions through the placement of items like a watch, inkwell, and pen. However, Man-sik then critically thought that Jung-woo didn't even know basic terms and was using a classic play he could barely comprehend. Looking at Jung-woo, who was silently contemplating, Man-sik directly asked him what exactly he wanted to become. Man-sik continued, questioning why Jung-woo was always so quiet when someone like him was nearby and what kind of dream he was chasing, suggesting stage manager, director. As Jung-woo sat pensively on the stool, Man-sik urged him, "Come on, it's time you told me." Jung-woo finally replied that his dream was just to live like this, the way he was now, prompting a bewildered like this from Man-sik. Gesturing around the room at the scripts and props, Man-sik then questioned, "Then what's all this about?" As Jung-woo remained silent, Jung-woo explains he merely set the stage before the scene begins, to which Man-sik echoes, "Laid the stage." Man-sik then asked if Jung-woo was planning to act it out, and Jung-woo remained silent, looking down. Observing Jung-woo's lack of denial, Man-sik, with a hand behind his head, notes that he isn't refuting it, with a poster for a legal drama visible in the background. Man-sik, scratching his head, realizes Jung-woo is interested in acting too, having previously assumed his passion was solely for directing. A flashback shows Jung-woo watching a play from the audience, broom in hand. As Man-sik wonders if this interest in acting is why he was so engrossed in the stage, Man-sik then comments that from what he's seen, Jung-woo would be better suited for directing than acting, while questioning if all the prop arrangement was truly necessary for just one scene. As Jung-woo stands by the ornate table, Jung-woo, with a serious look in his bright blue eyes, asserts that he didn't place any of the items by accident. He further clarifies that everything there serves a purpose, showing close-ups of the meticulously arranged script, papers, watch, and pen. Man-sik dismisses this as just an excuse, stating that great actors can find their emotions anywhere. But Jung-woo, standing by the table laden with books and papers, counters that theater is different. With an intense gaze, Jung-woo concludes that is precisely why they have the stage. Man-sik, gesturing with his hand, questions Jung-woo, "The stage? What does that have to do with acting?" Jung-woo, facing away towards the ornate table, explains that every part of the stage, be it actors or props, must work in harmony, prompting Man-sik to ask if harmony is more important than acting ability. With his hand resting on a script, Jung-woo clarifies that while harmony is part of it, he desires the stage itself to be perfect. Man-sik stands with his hand on his chin, thoughtfully observing Jung-woo, who is now looking towards him. Jung-woo, after a brief pause, looks intently at Man-sik. He then declares he'll demonstrate right there, stepping towards the table as Man-sik utters a surprised "What?" A close-up reveals Jung-woo's hand pressing firmly onto the script and papers on the table. Leaning over the table, Jung-woo is enveloped in an intense purple aura, his focus entirely on the script and the surrounding props. Man-sik watches from the side, his expression one of serious contemplation as he observes Jung-woo. A dramatic sequence shows Jung-woo's hand covering his face, followed by a textured transition, culminating in a close-up of Man-sik's eye widening in utter shock. Man-sik recognized he could tell the moment it began, seeing Jung-woo's pain expression as he clutched his head, the face of someone with nowhere to go and nothing left to lose. He observed that Jung-woo wasn't just blabbering amongst the props. He had transformed into a completely different person. Man-sik wondered how he even managed it, noticing the bloodshot whites of Jung-woo's eyes, stained red from burst vessels. This was a physical reaction that couldn't be produced by acting alone, making Man-sik question if it was truly possible to reach such a level of immersion so quickly. Jung-woo, now fully in character, slammed his fist on the table, shouting in anguish, "What's the point of all this?" He trembled, leaning heavily on the ornate table, surrounded by scripts and props. Stumbling slightly, Jung-woo moved around the table, his posture conveying deep distress. His foot then deliberately stepped on a watch lying on the floor, crushing it. With a sudden, violent motion, Jung-woo kicked out, sending props flying. Man-sik, watching with alarm, exclaimed, "That's dangerous." Realizing that too many objects around had messed up Jung-woo's movement, Man-sik's eyes widened in shock as Jung-woo's hand shot out, gripping the back of a chair. With a slight stumble, Jung-woo leaned heavily against the ornate chair, seemingly losing his balance. He then sank into the chair, his head bowing low in apparent exhaustion. Seated, Jung-woo buried his face in his hands, a picture of utter desolation. A chilling realization dawned on Man-sik, his expression one of profound astonishment. Man-sik understood it wasn't a mistake. Even as Jungwoo fell, his reach for the chair, his posture, and the angle of his collapsed body were perfectly natural. The broken props scattered around him, coupled with his vacant expression, as if he had no strength left to rise, all contributed to the scene. Looking up with wide, haunted blue eyes, hands still clutching his head, Jungwoo seemed utterly consumed by the character's despair. Mansik acknowledged that Jungwoo had been right about everything. Every single part of his performance was in perfect harmony with the staged environment. As Jungwoo slowly came out of character, Mansik, looking somewhat dazed, quietly uttered, "It's over." Mansik, with a determined expression, declared internally, "This won't do." He then looked at Jungwoo, whose bright blue eyes met his, and stated firmly, "You have to get on stage." Jungwoo narrated that it's already been 2 years since I broke away from my father's, as a modern building stood against a clear sky. While walking down a bustling city street with a duffel bag, he recalled, and without an identity. Even getting a part-time job wasn't easy. A flashback showed him in a construction helmet, wiping a bloodied hand, thinking, "I could live easily if I just made up my mind." However, against a bright, cloudy backdrop, his firm decision was clear, "But I vowed never to do those kinds of things again." Consequently, spending each day at the construction site was a kind of satisfying daily routine. As he carried a heavy sack past other workers, the simple words, "Yeah, IT," was somewhat satisfying, appeared starkly on a white background. Nevertheless, as Jungwoo ate a packed lunch near a large truck, he acknowledged to himself, "But I knew." Picking at his meal with chopsticks, he understood what IT was that I so desperately longed for. A co-worker called out to Jungwoo, who was eating, remarking that at his age, he should be out having fun, not stuck there. The same co-worker then mentioned hearing about a theater opening in the next neighborhood, and suggested Jungwoo check it out. A close-up showed Jungwoo's bright blue eye, a flicker of interest appearing as he processed the suggestion. With the sun setting behind him, Jungwoo thoughtfully considered the word theater. His white sneakers are shown taking a step, indicating he decided to go, though he remained silent. Inside the theater, Jungwoo sat on a stool watching the actors rehearse a scene on stage with a couch. Standing by the theater entrance, he realized it was actually a play, not a movie as he might have initially expected. From the back of the theater, Jungwoo observed the brightly lit, empty stage. Another lone figure seated further down. That figure, Mansik, let out a heavy sigh, while watching the stage. A detail Jungwoo noted but didn't find particularly important. What truly mattered more to Jungwoo, as he watched with a serious expression, was something else entirely. He was only briefly disappointed that it wasn't a movie. Yet it had been a long time since he felt this overwhelmed. The actor's energy, live on stage and not in front of a camera, came across as a different kind of charm from film. For a moment, he even felt the urge to be on that stage, realizing it all started from that day. As soon as work ended, he headed to the theater, his body moving before he could think. He sat in the empty theater, with Mansik also present, watching the stage from a distance. From his seat in the back, Jungwoo continued to observe the vacant stage. Mansik then approached him from the front, directly asking, "What's your name?" The man, who seemed to be a staff member, persistently asked, "Let's at least hear your name." With a slightly annoyed but concerned expression, Mansik then questioned, "Can't you just come in, get treated, and go?" As Jungwoo found his nosiness irritating, but not malicious, Jungwoo observed that the man just had a rough way of talking, but didn't seem like the type to hurt anyone. Mansik, pulling Jungwoo away, exclaims, "Get out of here, punk. Why are you wasting your time with these kinds of people?" While also thinking, there are still people like that around, huh? Looking at Jungwoo's somber face, Mansik internally reflects, this guy must have had a hard life too. Facing Jungwoo, Mansik quietly states, "It's over." A determined look crosses Mansik's face as he thinks this won't do. He then firmly tells Jungwoo, whose bright blue eyes meet his, "You've got to go up on stage." Mansik internally admits, "Honestly, I didn't expect much when it came to acting," believing that emotions come from experience. As Jungwoo stands in the rehearsal room, he considered that no matter how talented someone is, he's only 17, viewing him as a 17-year-old kid with limits. Mansik, arms crossed, acknowledges to himself, "I knew the kid was freakishly smart." Yet he also believed, but that and artistic talent are two different things. As the scene shows the rehearsal room, an exclamation mark appears by Mansik's eyes, he thinks, however, indicating a shift in his understanding. Mansik, running a hand through his hair in frustration, conceded that his previous assessment was just his narrow-minded thinking. He understood that the abilities which had astounded him were merely Jungwoo's preparatory devices for acting. Watching Jungwoo pick up scattered items in the rehearsal room, Mansik believed the boy belonged on a real stage, not confined here. Jungwoo, holding a script with his arms crossed, calmly stated that he didn't really have any intention of pursuing that path, though. An impassioned Mansick insisted Jungwoo didn't realize how amazing his talent was, and could make it big if he just followed him. To which Jungwoo replied he liked how things were now. Mansick then questioned if the scripts in the practice room were all there was to it, further pressing why someone with such talent wouldn't have any desire to act. While looking towards a monodrama poster on the wall, Jungwoo simply declared that he didn't want to be famous. A close-up on Mansick's face revealed his intense scrutiny of the boy, a thought forming, this kid. As Jungwoo reached for another script on the bookshelf, Mansick came to the striking realization that the boy was fully aware of his own talent. Mansick observed Jungwoo's confident stance, recognizing an attitude that suggested it was a foregone conclusion he would become famous if he ever started acting. Mansick internally acknowledged that perhaps just being famous wouldn't be enough for Jungwoo, yet he couldn't give up, then told Jungwoo he understood he had some kind of dramatic past. He continued, questioning how much Jungwoo could have truly seen at his age, then exclaimed that it wasn't easy for him to get this far either. Mansick passionately declared he'd take care of whatever came after, urging Jungwoo to live doing what he wanted to do. A slight smirk touched Jungwoo's lips as the word responsibility appeared below him. Jungwoo internally noted that Mansick was offering to take responsibility for someone he'd known for less than a month, then asked Mansick, "Why, are you gonna kill for me or something?" Mansick shouted an emphatic yeah, as a close-up showed Jungwoo's bright blue eye. He then dramatically declared, "I'll kill them all for you. So, are you in?" Clutching his chest with a fervent expression, Jungwoo stood on the stage behind heavy red curtains, peering through a slight opening. A close-up revealed Jungwoo's bright blue eye, a bead of sweat on his temple. As he looked out from behind the curtain, the view shifted to the audience looking at the closed red stage curtains with the thought, he really came up here. In the audience, some people dozed off while others chatted amongst themselves, indicating a certain restlessness. Jungwoo, standing backstage, reflected that it wasn't as if he didn't comprehend Mansick's emotions. A memory surfaced of Mansick appearing deeply worried, his hand pressed to his chest. A bead of sweat was visible near Mansick's eye in that recollection, highlighting his concern. Jungwoo admitted to himself he had merely feigned ignorance, recognizing Mansick's desire not to let his talent go to waste and how he'd been given a job, allowing easy access to plays. He further recalled Mansick's offer to take responsibility for him, wondering if that was the reason he couldn't refuse the opportunity to act. Yet, as the stage lights shone, Jungwoo considered that perhaps there was another reason for his decision. The heavy red curtains began to part, slowly revealing the seated audience. As the curtains opened wider, Jungwoo stood alone on the vast stage, facing the expectant crowd. From the audience, Mansick watched Jungwoo take his place on the stage, ready to perform. Mansick, watching from the wings with a slight smile, exclaims, "It's starting." Another man beside Mansick asks if Jungwoo is the kid he mentioned before, to which Mansick replies, "Yeah, don't be surprised. That kid's really something else." The man notes that the lead dropped out 5 days ago, and wonders if Jungwoo even had time to prepare, especially since it's mostly monologues with many lines, as Jungwoo stands pensively on stage. With a knowing smile, Mansick listens as the other man questions if Jungwoo at least has some prior experience with theater. The skeptical man reflects that 5 days is an impossible amount of time, particularly for a kid who's never even studied the basics of acting. Mansick then corrects him, stating it wasn't 5 days, but 12 hours, causing the other man to ask in disbelief, What did you say?" With an intense, almost challenging gaze, Mansick reiterates, "I said, it's been 12 hours, adding that it doesn't matter whether the script is long for him. Jungwoo stands calmly on the dimly lit stage, dressed in period costume, his bright blue eyes looking forward. A single spotlight illuminates Jungwoo's outstretched hand as he begins his performance. Seated on a lone chair under the spotlight, Jungwoo gestures with his hand, thinking, "I'm still trapped in those moments." He continued his monologue, "Now that I've lost you," as audience members, including a man covering his mouth and a girl in a baseball cap, watched intently. The performance carried on with the words, "The world has imprisoned me in darkness and silence," while the same spectators appeared increasingly surprised. On stage, Jungwoo raised his hand, delivering the poignant lines, "The moment I first saw you, time seemed to stop." A close-up captured a tear welling in Jungwoo's eye as he conveyed the character's thought. "It was a feeling I never experienced before." Seated alone on the chair under the bright spotlight, he went on, "The moment you held my hand and smiled brightly." Attention shifted to the rows of theater seats, with his voice narrating from offstage. "Our first farewell." The expressions of the audience, especially the man and the girl in the cap, showed they were deeply captivated and moved by the unfolding drama. Jungwoo, still on the chair, bowed his head in a display of profound despair. His monologue concluding, "I couldn't do anything. Nothing." Suddenly, he rose from his seat, the chair clattering to the floor beside him as he powerfully declared, "We were living in such different worlds." A stark black background featured text bubbles conveying the character's inner turmoil, my past, my struggles, and the choices I was forced to make. On his knees, Jung-woo passionately delivered the line, "You didn't understand any of it." The audience, including the man and the girl in the cap, watched with rapt attention as his voice echoed, "You were everything to me. How could you say such a thing to me?" From the wings, the skeptical man, his eye wide with a bead of sweat, turned to Mansik and asked in astonishment, "Where did you bring that monster from?" Mansik, with a knowing look, explained that even though Jung-woo's vocalization and breathing weren't technically perfect for the play, everyone in the theater was completely focused on his acting. The two men watched Jung-woo kneeling on stage, Mansik's voiceover stating, "It's not memorization. They've made the entire life of the role they're playing their own." Jung-woo, deeply immersed in his role, continued to perform, the narration noting, and the lines changed slightly with every surge of emotion. His delivery was so authentic that it felt as though, if the person on stage were truly that character, they probably would have said it that way. Tears streamed down Jung-woo's face as he clutched his chest, a spectral image of another man mirroring his grief, prompting the thought, "Are they really acting?" A woman's foot, clad in a black high-heeled shoe, stepped gracefully onto the stage. Under the spotlight, a young woman in a white dress bowed deeply towards Jung-woo, who stood opposite her, the overturned chair still on the floor. Jung-woo, in character, gazes at the actress playing Ellie, his expression filled with sorrow as he utters her name. He urgently catches Ellie as she appears to faint, crying out her name with alarm. Cradling the collapsing Ellie, he implores her not to leave, while she weakly begins to confess something she hadn't told him about why she couldn't answer him before. Ellie trails off mid-sentence, a look of panic dawning on her face as she internally realizes she has suddenly forgotten her lines. On stage, with Mansik and another man watching from the wings, Jung-woo prompts her. The reason is, as Ellie stammers, unable to recall her dialogue, Mansik, observing from backstage, slaps his forehead in despair, thinking with dread that the actors have forgotten their lines. The narration explains that such memory lapses are common for inexperienced actors. But unlike recorded media, live plays offer no room for errors, as Ellie looks distressed. From the side of the stage, Mansik silently pleads for them to continue as if nothing is wrong, even if they stumble, while the audience watches the pair under the spotlight. A stark thought bubble appears containing the urgent plea, "Nitrogen monoxide, don't say it." Jung-woo, as his character, tenderly touches Ellie's cheek, gently telling her that she doesn't need to say anything more. Embracing her, Jung-woo, with tears in his eyes, softly uttered, "I knew." Tears streamed down his face as he continued, "So." He then kissed Ellie passionately, his internal thought being, "So now." The red curtain began to close, obscuring the two actors from the audience's view. In the audience, the girl in the baseball cap and the man beside her watched with teary, astonished expressions. The silhouettes of the audience members erupted in thunderous applause as the curtains fully closed. From the wings, Mansik watched with a proud smile as Jung-woo and Ellie took a bow, another man falling to the floor in amazement behind him. Mansik continued to observe as Jung-woo and Ellie walked off stage, their performance concluded. He let out a disbelieving laugh, internally questioning if this was truly a stage prepared in just 12 hours. Considering most actors take over 2 weeks for character analysis, Mansik further reflected that on top of character analysis, actors must memorize lines and adjust their movements according to the props, highlighting the incredible feat Jung-woo had accomplished. A woman reading a script mused that in 12 hours, they must have been incredibly busy just memorizing lines, and impressively, they even improvised to cover a supporting actor's mistake at the end. The scene replayed the tender moment on stage where Jung-woo and Ellie embraced, their performance deeply affecting. Backstage, two men discussed the unbelievable audience reaction from just the first act, one still marveling how a 17-year-old could prepare such a performance so quickly. Mansik then corrected his companion, stating it was a misconception to believe they only prepare the acting, which prompted a curious "what?" from the other man. He elaborated, asking if the other hadn't noticed how the stage concept, chair size, movements, lighting, and even the color scheme had all been meticulously altered. The companion, a bead of sweat on his temple, admitted with dawning realization, "Now that you mention it," when asked if he listened to all of Jung-woo's complex directions regarding emotions and line placement, Mansik confessed he didn't understand it all either, feeling bewildered by the incomprehensible things Jung-woo had been saying. However, Mansik affirmed with a determined expression that there was one thing he knew for certain. He declared with conviction that Jungwoo was more outstanding than anyone else present. As Ellie dabbed her eyes and Jungwoo sat pensively in the dressing room, Jungwoo, enveloped in a soft blue glow, sat alone, a profound question, "What is this feeling?" echoing in his mind. He reflected that it wasn't as if he was acting for the first time, recalling how he played numerous roles while committing fraud in his past life. Jungwoo acknowledged internally that it wasn't as though he was unaware of his own talent. However, he mused that this particular instance felt distinctly different from his previous experiences. Standing on stage, he felt the intense gazes of the audience focused solely on him. The spectators, deeply moved to tears by his performance, watched with rapt attention. Several audience members were shown openly weeping, overcome by the emotion of the play. When the emotions reached their zenith, everyone, including Jungwoo, felt momentarily transported to another world. This unfamiliar sensation washed over him as he contemplated his second life. He remembered even resolving to die and abandon his name. A scene of a rainy cliff underscoring this past despair. A close-up of his younger face showed his past belief that he could live that way. Detached and unknown, seated on a chair under a spotlight, facing a silhouetted audience, Jungwoo wonders, "Can I really do that?" Mansik strides purposefully towards Jungwoo and Ellie, who are sitting backstage. Ellie, looking flustered, apologizes for her earlier mistake as Mansik turns away slightly. Mansik's hand grips Jungwoo's shoulder as he exclaims, "You little brat." He then tells Jungwoo, "So you were playing hard to get, even though you're this good." Ellie asks Jungwoo if he's going on soon and if he'll look at the script, while Mansik teases him about getting the part after obsessing over the script, and Jungwoo, looking overwhelmed, says, "I feel dizzy." Jungwoo, with his hand to his forehead, explains, "I just don't want to be trapped by the lines." Mansik, looking unimpressed, retorts, "What, you little punk? More of your unintelligible talk." A thoughtful expression crosses Mansik's face as he mutters, "HMM? I've heard that somewhere before." A panel of judges sits at a table, with text bubbles explaining that preparation means having that character in your heart, and if you keep staring at the script, you'll unknowingly get trapped by the lines. Mansik recalled a veteran actress explaining that if you grasp a character's emotions, the lines flow naturally, which is why she avoids looking at the script on set. He remembered her adding with a laugh that while it might sound obnoxious, she'd been acting for over 20 years. Hearing similar words from Jungwoo, who had just finished his first act ever, felt less like a bluff and more like an undeniable inner strength. Jungwoo then mentioned, "Besides, there are a lot of unfamiliar terms in the script, so it's giving me a headache." Mansik could only utter a soft ah in response to this unexpected complaint. He realized with some exasperation that this incredibly talented kid still didn't even properly know basic stage terms. Mansik internally chided himself for just shoving the script at Jungwoo without thinking, acknowledging the boy's skill was already beyond his ability to manage. As Mansik wondered where to even begin processing all this, a staff member announced that Act 2 was starting and they should get ready. Jungwoo then addressed Mansik, saying, "Mr." To which Mansik replied with a questioning HMM. The young actor simply stated, "I'm going in, ready to face the stage once more." On stage, Jungwoo and Ellie danced under a spotlight, their performance captivating the silhouetted audience members. Jungwoo, with a charming smile, delivered his lines with expressive gestures. He then gestured towards Ellie, who stood before him, as he continued his dialogue. The play concluded with Jungwoo, Ellie, and another actor bowing to a wildly applauding, silhouetted audience. In the audience, the man in the baseball cap clapped enthusiastically, clearly impressed by the show. A close-up on his hand covering his mouth revealed his internal thought, "I finally found IT." The day after the performance, Jungwoo sat alone in a spacious room, surrounded by bookshelves and posters, engrossed in a book. He was deeply focused on the open book in his lap, with several other books stacked neatly beside him on the wooden floor. Mansik's voice then questioned Jungwoo from off-panel, "Are you going to stare at those all your life?" Mansik, holding some papers, then appeared before Jungwoo asking, "Where have you been?" "You were nowhere to be seen all morning," to which Jungwoo, looking up, replied with a question, "Is this enough for now?" Mansik drops a shopping bag, and several books tumble out onto the wooden floor. Jungwoo looks at the fallen books, a thought bubble above him reading, "This is." Mansik explains that while the books might not be entertaining, they will be beneficial, adding that Jungwoo must have experienced some frustration during this period. Mansik's internal monologue reveals there is only one bookstore in this rural town, situated in the city center. A map displays the Jasmine bookstore and the main theater. As Mansik considers Jungwoo having traveled all that distance in the heat, Jungwoo, holding one of the books, reflects that what Mansik casually mentioned the previous day must have troubled him throughout. Mansik observes Jungwoo seated on the floor, deeply absorbed in reading one of the newly acquired books. Mansik, with a bead of sweat, internally wonders if this young person genuinely requires these theories, uttering a soft He further contemplates whether offering such theoretical knowledge isn't merely constraining Jungwoo's remarkable instincts, as the boy continues to read. Despite his reservations, Mansik resigns himself with the thought still. These are all I can do for them. Jungwoo, engrossed in a book, remarks with a slight smile, it's fun. Mansik, standing nearby, asks, well, does IT help a bit though? To which Jungwoo, still reading, replies, this is my first time studying, but it's more fun than I thought. With a bead of sweat, Mansik echoes, fun, huh? Then questions, are you sure this is truly the first time you've encountered this? Jungwoo looks up from his book with a knowing glint in his eyes, asserting, IT is not just actors who can act well, as he considers how one can act without proper knowledge. Mansik, looking slightly perplexed, asks, what do you mean by that? While Jungwoo, from his seated position, advises, be careful, people like you, mister, are easy targets out there? Continuing to read, Jungwoo elaborates, you just jump into things without thinking. As Mansik questions, people like me, Mansik, with a hand to his neck, defensively exclaims, when did I ever do that? While Jungwoo calmly reads, prompting Mansik to wonder, seriously, what does a tiny thing like you know? Jungwoo looks up sharply, his blue eyes focused as he states, you're doing IT to me right now. Mansik looks somber as Jungwoo implies he's acting recklessly. Even though you know nothing about me. Jungwoo sits thoughtfully, a silent moment passing between him and Mansik, who is now seen from behind. Holding a book, Jungwoo then asks Mansik, do you want me to become famous? Mansik thoughtfully replies, nitrogen monoxide. Not necessarily. Standing amidst shelves in a storage area, Mansik clarifies his intentions. Then what? I just want you to live doing what you truly want to do. He adds with a reflective look, it took me quite a long time to figure that out. Mansik then looks at Jungwoo, acknowledging, you might think I'm using you. But, with a poster for 8 angry men visible behind him, Mansik continues, even if you messed up the stage, I would have gone to the bookstore today. Jungwoo, with a knowing smirk, responds, probably. IT's not like that. If I thought you were using me, I would have already extorted the theater long ago. Holding one of the books, Jungwoo then sincerely states, thank you for these books. I needed them anyway. Mansik, looking somewhat surprised, asks, really? To which Jungwoo, already engrossed in reading, affirms, yes, really. A close-up on Jungwoo's determined mouth reveals his internal vow. I'll definitely repay you later. As the sun sets, a voice greets hello, Representative Ju Mansik outside the theater, which has a sign reading a muttering man. Mansik turns, a questioning look on his face as he sees the speaker. A bead of sweat appears near Mansik's eye as it widens in surprise. The visitor states, so you operate this theater, while Mansik internally exclaims, this person is. Mansik wonders, why is this person here? As the visitor stands before him outside the theater, with an inset image of a grander building with flags. The visitor repeats, hello, Director Ju Mansik. I hear you run this theater. And Mansik continues to internally question, why is this person here? The scene shifts to the impressive NK Entertainment building, with several well-dressed individuals in the foreground. Text explains that NK is famous as a hub for Korea's top actors, and this man is in charge of matching actors with projects, casting for major films and dramas, with most of his projects being successful. The man, NK Entertainment director Choi Jamin, a name even non-actors know, extends his hand, while Mansik internally wonders what business someone like him could have there. Mansik nervously asks, yes, but what brings you here? And Choi Jamin replies with a smile, I enjoyed yesterday's performance. Choi Jamin then inquired about that kid, as Mansik looked on with a bead of sweat. When asked if Jungwoo was a member of the theater company, Mansik affirmed he was, before clarifying that while not officially part of the company, the boy did indeed work there. Standing outside the theater, Choi Jamin announced he wished to make a proposal, apologizing for his unannounced visit and admitting this was the first time he'd acted so impulsively. A smile spread across Choi Jamin's face as he remarked, it's been a while, referring to a particular sensation. A flashback depicted Jungwoo on stage, overlaid with Choi Jamin's thought about that feeling of discovering a treasure. Mansik questioned if Choi Jamin intended to cast Jungwoo, to which the director, gesturing animatedly, replied it wasn't just any casting. Choi Jamin elaborated that they had been struggling to find a child actor for an upcoming project, noting that even among talented child actors, it's usually just bright children who perform well. Mansik listened intently as Choi Jamin explained it's challenging for young actors to convey maturity, yet Jungwoo had portrayed the life of a 30-year-old with no awkwardness. The man in the baseball cap, revealed to be Choi Jamin, then asserted that Jungwoo had even surpassed that level of performance. Choi Jamin, looking thoroughly impressed, uttered really, as he contemplated the extent of Jungwoo's talent. Choi Jamin, standing outside the theater with Mansik, thinks. To think he was hidden in a place like this, as a poster for 8 Angry Men is visible. Mansik, with a serious expression, states that Jungwoo's abilities are far beyond just being exceptional, and then asks Choi Jamin if he has any specific plans for him. Choi Jamin, looking slightly surprised, echoes, "Plans, you say?" Mansik, gesturing, explains he's already aware of NK's professional scale and is asking if Choi Jamin plans to provide basic training, major domestic and international projects, overseas education opportunities. Mansik continues, listing in chances to attend major events, then adds, of course, assuming he wants those things, as scenes of professional training and events are shown. Choi Jamin, with a bead of sweat on his temple, questions with disbelief. You want me to provide such big opportunities for free to a young rookie with no experience? Mansik counters, I think you know if you've seen the performance. That's why you're so eager and waiting here like this, while Choi Jamin listens thoughtfully. Hand to his chin. Choi Jamin, with a slight smile, replies, I understand. I'll try my best to accommodate that. But then adds, it's not something I can decide alone. Mansik internally observes, seeing him hesitate. He must not fully understand the kid's potential yet, then thinks. What you've seen isn't even half of it. A close-up on Mansik's determined eyes through his glasses emphasizes his conviction. Choi Jamin presents his NK Entertainment business card, explaining they simply want to provide an environment that can help the child. He hands the card to Mansik, expressing hope that Mansik will consider an advantageous and quick path for the child, given his evident care. Choi Jamin advises Mansik to think it over and inform him of the decision. As the sun sets behind the muttering man theater. Later, Jungwoo lies spread-eagled on the wooden floor, surrounded by scattered books in a sunlit room. While on the floor, he wonders what he should do, acknowledging his current lack of funds. Jungwoo continues to reflect, considering that Mansik isn't the type to be motivated by money anyway. As he contemplates, the distinct sound of a door opening interrupts his thoughts. With posters for 8 Angry Men visible in the background, Mansik peers into the room, observing Jungwoo and silently noting that the boy already seems bored. Jungwoo, still lying down, looks up as Mansik clears his throat to announce his presence. Entering the room, Mansik mentions he came to check if Jungwoo was doing well and questions why he isn't asking any questions with such a great teacher nearby. Mansik, with a curious glint in his eye through his glasses, seemed to ponder Jungwoo's unasked questions. Jungwoo, holding a book, began about that while Mansik, looking at the book, remarked, I guess you do have some curiosities. Showing a page with highlighted text, Jungwoo pointed out, it's translated in advance. But looking at the sample examples, the meaning seems a bit different. Mansik sat down opposite Jungwoo, confidently stating, all right, let me take a look. I may have 5 years of experience in this field, but I've studied 10 years' worth. Jungwoo indicated a specific passage, saying, it's this part here. As Mansik internally wondered if the moment for him to be helpful had finally arrived. A close-up on Mansik's eye showed his utter surprise as he uttered a questioning, huh? Staring at the script with a bewildered expression, Mansik exclaimed, HMMTH this is. What language is this? I've studied classical texts, but I've only seen translated versions until now. Mansik, looking increasingly flustered as he tried to explain, well, you see, this is. Suddenly shot up from his seat with a jolt. Jungwoo looked up with a slightly puzzled eye as Mansik made his abrupt move. Mansik then dashed away, clutching his stomach and exclaiming, oh my stomach. Just keep looking at it for now. Leaving Jungwoo amidst posters for a muttering man and 8 angry men. The door slammed shut with a resounding noise as Mansik made his hasty exit. Standing alone in the hallway, Mansik looked utterly dejected by the turn of events. A close-up on Mansik's eye revealed his internal monologue. Just how much more are you going to surprise me? He reflected that while it was the outcome he'd hoped for, Jungwoo had grown so quickly that he was already too much for him to handle. Mansik admitted to himself that despite experiencing many failures, this was the first time he felt so inadequate. His gaze filled with concern as he wondered how much further he could guide the boy, with his own limited capacity. Later, Jungwoo approached Mansik, holding a book and stating, I don't understand this part here. Please explain it to me. Mansik looked intently at the passage Jungwoo indicated, a bead of sweat forming on his temple. A wave of relief washed over Mansik as he recognized the text, thinking, this fortunately. I know this one. Mansik then began to explain, Brecht's fourth wall theory. This refers to the imaginary wall between the audience and the stage. Mansik elaborated that in Brecht's plays, actors sometimes break the fourth wall, directly communicating with the audience. This technique, he continued as Jun-woo listened, connects the play to social messages, going beyond mere entertainment. Jun-woo affirmed his comprehension, then pointed to another section in the book, indicating he understood that part as well. Standing in the hallway, Jun-woo remarked that this new section wasn't particularly difficult either. The scene transitioned to a bright blue sky with fluffy clouds, then shifted to an interior view of Mansik's office. Later, Mansik was deeply engrossed in studying at his desk, surrounded by stacks of books, one of which fell with a thud. A close-up revealed one of the books in his hand, titled Understanding Theater. Mansik mused to himself, a thoughtful expression on his face, about the irony of revisiting these theatrical studies at his current age. Hunched over his desk, diligently studying, he wondered if he had ever been this passionate about learning since first entering the theater world. However, a troubled look crossed Mansik's face, indicating that his newfound passion for learning was unfortunately short-lived. With innate talent augmented by affection and passion, his growth rate soared beyond all imaginable limits. Now, he no longer required theory books, having already surpassed the proficiency of seasoned professionals. After all the staff depart, Jun-woo meticulously sets up the empty stage and flawlessly replicates scripts. He masters the emotions and habits of various characters, their movements, and the shifting angles of lighting that define each scene's mood, truly entering the realm of art. His practice involves retaining only the character's core emotions from the script, while rewriting the remaining dialogue himself. Indeed, it's not merely practice anymore. He's single-handedly filling the stage and reveling in the experience. Mansik, observing Jun-woo alone on the stage, quietly thinks to himself, I guess. Holding Choi Jaemin's NK Entertainment business card, Mansik concludes, this would be better. Over the phone, a voice identifies this is Choi Jaemin, to which Mansik responds, this is Ju Mansik. Mansik, with a determined expression, then suggests, let's put everything aside and talk face to face. The scene opens on a sunny day, showing a restaurant with a sign that reads Galbatang's short rib soup. Nestled between modern buildings, Jun-woo is shown in close-up, taking a sip from a bowl, his eyes closed as if savoring the taste. Across the table, Mansik watches Jun-woo with a thoughtful arms crossed. As Jun-woo continues to eat, Mansik, looking troubled, internally questions, what should I do? On the phone in an empty theater, Mansik is told he's made the right decision and they'll meet all conditions, with an offer to discuss anything else the kid wants, prompting Mansik to wonder if they'll really give up so much. Mansik, still on the call, confirms he'll discuss it with Jun-woo later. As the other person expresses they're generous enough to agree to everything, the caller asks if Jun-woo is free tomorrow, wanting to see his acting with their script during his visit, to which Mansik reacts with surprise. Acting right away, Choi Jaemin, in his office, reassures Mansik not to feel pressured, suggesting it's a way to look around the company and see if their training style suits Jun-woo. Choi Jaemin confidently states that with such generous conditions, the contract is practically confirmed, believing no aspiring actor would turn down his initial offer. Mansik, however, with a bead of sweat, internally doubts Jun-woo will follow along easily, judging from his behavior so far. Mansik, looking troubled, internally questions how he's supposed to coax this brat Jun-woo, who states he'd rather read another script than waste time going to Seoul, and that Mansik doesn't need to see it to know. At the restaurant table, Mansik asks Jun-woo why he isn't eating, offering to finish it himself, then encourages him to eat, while wondering if he should order more. Jun-woo simply replies no, leading Mansik to ask what he's been doing all this time without even visiting Seoul, then inquires if he's ever traveled, to which Jun-woo admits he's never been on a trip. Mansik slams the table in disbelief, exclaiming, what? You've never traveled even once? And questions why Jun-woo didn't do that while he had the chance. A close-up on Mansik's eye, with a tear forming, shows him thinking, no, this isn't right, and that he almost went off track. Mansik then clears his throat and asks Jun-woo if he has at least heard of the Yuksan building, explaining it's in Seoul and would amaze him if he saw it. While Jun-woo continues to eat, Mansik begins to describe the building, stating it has a whopping, with an excited expression and holding up his fingers. Mansik reveals the building has 63 floors. Jun-woo, taking a spoonful of soup, calmly responds, that's amazing. An overhead view shows the two of them sitting at a table in the sparsely populated restaurant. A period of silence following Jun-woo's understated reaction. Mansik, after a cough, mentions he has to go to Seoul tomorrow and casually invites Jun-woo along if he's bored. He elaborates that Seoul is on a completely different level than their rural area, mentioning Myeongdong and the numerous huge buildings, trying to pique Jun-woo's curiosity. Mansik then enthusiastically described the Han River, claiming it's incomparable to the small streams in their countryside. Junwoo continues to eat his meal, remaining silent and seemingly unfazed by Mansik's descriptions. A bead of sweat appears on Mansik's temple as he trails off, saying he was just saying, you know. Junwoo then directly asked Mansik, "Do you want to send me off that badly?" To which Mansik, flustered, denies it, insisting he just wants Junwoo to see Seoul. Looking down at something in his hand, Junwoo remarks, "That's disappointing." Then questions Mansik, "When do you get that greedy?" Mansik, looking surprised, asked what, as text below him poses the question. So he knew everything. A close-up reveals Mansik's wide, shocked eyes and a bead of sweat, clearly taken aback by Junwoo's insight. As Junwoo calmly continues eating, Mansik internally wonders if the boy eavesdropped on his call or perhaps has been in contact with Choi Jamin without his knowledge. Mansik internally laments, "If I'd known this would happen, I should have talked to him first." Then thinks so. Junwoo then asks, "Are we going to Seoul tomorrow?" prompting a surprised Mansik to question, "What? Are you going to?" To which Junwoo replies, "If I say we goin', then we're goin'." Mansik inquires, "Is there somewhere you want to visit?" And Junwoo responds, "Nitrogen monoxide, not really." Making Mansik wonder, is he really going because he wants to come with me? Mansik internally frets, "I only mention IT jokingly. Does he think I'm taking him for some professional training?" Mansik clarifies, "I'm not doing this to make you better or anything." And Junwoo affirms, "I know." As Mansik adds, "About that company you can't even imagine how big IT is." Junwoo listens intently as Mansik explains, "I might not know your situation, but they could help with IT later on." Mansik advises, "You should at least meet people who are on your level," adding, "Nitrogen monoxide matter how good your acting is, everyone here's a rookie." He continues, "You should be lucky if they don't ruin your stage," then dismissively asks, "And what would those kids even know?" Junwoo, with a calm expression, then asks, "So where is IT exactly?" Mansik wonders aloud, "Would you know if I told you? It's called NK Entertainment, anyway. There'll be people there who'll recognize your value." To which Junwoo simply replies, "Well, all right." Mansik internally questions Junwoo's uncharacteristic obedience, wondering if the boy broke the stage or something. At the restaurant, Mansik asks aloud, "Are we really going?" While Junwoo remains silent. The impressive NK Entertainment building stands tall against a bright blue sky, prompting an amazed hone from Mansik. Inside, Mansik excitedly recognizes the production studio he's seen on TV and notes the newly released equipment. Junwoo calmly observes as Mansik, with a surprised "Oh, that's," peers through a window. Mansik asks Junwoo what's wrong, stating he's not a country bumpkin. Then defensively questions if Junwoo is implying he's making a fuss, to which Junwoo replies, "I didn't say it that," as an employee stands nearby. The employee announces, "We've arrived," and directs them, "Sir, please wait right here," indicating a meeting room. Mansik, looking nervous but determined, says, "All right, let's go see." Then, while Junwoo watches him calmly, Mansik's hand reaches for the doorknob, uttering a hesitant "um." Turning back, Mansik asks Junwoo, "Are you coming in with me?" As Junwoo looks slightly surprised, replying, Mansik clarified he was merely opening the door for Junwoo, his hand on the knob. With a hopeful look, Mansik urged Junwoo to do well in there. To which Junwoo calmly replied, "Okay." As Junwoo stepped into the meeting room, a voice warmly greeted, "Welcome, student," his bright blue eyes taking in the scene. Before him sat two men at a large table, one of whom stated, "We've been expecting you." The man in the suit, Choi Jamin, gestured invitingly towards an empty chair, saying, "Please, have a seat here." Junwoo internally registered the man's identity, NK Entertainment's Choi Jamin. His gaze then shifted to the other individual seated next to him. This second figure was revealed to be NK Entertainment's renowned signature actor, Gil Junho. Choi Jamin repeated their anticipation, "We've been waiting for you, student. First, please have a seat." As Junwoo approached the table, Junwoo pulled out the offered chair, his focused blue eye indicating his readiness for the meeting. The man was Gil Junho, NK Entertainment's flagship top actor. To be precise, he wasn't a top actor yet at that time, but anyone who liked movies couldn't fail to recognize him. Even at this point, he was active as a solid supporting actor, and ordinarily, someone like him wouldn't attend a meeting of this nature. This implied Choi Jamin had brought him on purpose, as Junwoo mused, a young Gil Junho. How refreshing. Gil Junho then directly asked Junwoo, "What's your name?" Junwoo, shaking his head slightly, replied, "I don't have one yet. I'm planning to choose one now." Choi Jamin internally processed this nitrogen monoxide name, and has he already thought of a stage name? Observing Junwoo's calm demeanor, Choi Jamin wondered, he doesn't look nervous at all. Could IT be that he doesn't know who I am? He then reasoned. Well, I guess if you've lived in a place like that, IT's possible. As an image of Mansix, a muttering man-theater appeared. Choi Jamin, deciding to proceed, stated, well, let's get to know each other gradually. I watched your performance. IT was really impressive. Choi Jamin then inquired, when did you start acting? To which Jungwoo replied, since the performance was 2 weeks ago. It's been about 2 weeks. Gil Junho interjected, I saw that performance too. But I was asking when you started acting. And Jungwoo calmly affirmed, yes, that was my first time. A look of utter disbelief crossed Choi Jamin's face as he internally questioned, what is he saying? Choi Jamin, a bead of sweat forming, then wondered with skepticism, has it really only been 2 weeks since he started acting? Choi Jamin then presented a script titled Miracle Change Episode 1, explaining, we're currently planning a movie at our company. Jungwoo took the script, his eyes scanning the title as he thoughtfully uttered Miracle Change. A flashback showed a high schooler and a middle-aged man as Jungwoo recalled, I remember seeing IT in a past life. A story about a high schooler and a teacher in his for OS who swap bodies. Choi Jamin observed Jungwoo intently from across the table, a slight smile on his face. With an eager expression, Choi Jamin then proposed, before we go deeper into discussion, I'd like to see you act. Even just for a moment. Jungwoo glanced down at the Miracle Change script in his hand, his expression unreadable. Jungwoo silently observes the closed blinds of the meeting room door from the outside. Meanwhile, Mansik presses his ear against the door, frustrated that he can't hear anything they're saying. Inside the room, Choi Jamin, a bead of sweat on his temple, instructs Jungwoo, who is seated next to Gil Junho, to start reading from page 34. A close-up on Gil Junho's eye reveals his internal thought, unexpected. Gil Junho reflects that most aspiring actors I've seen in recent years cling to me begging to watch their acting, claiming they admire me. He observes Jungwoo, who calmly holds the script, thinking, but this one doesn't seem desperate at all. Gil Junho further considers that the Choi Jamin I know would have already thrown out someone like this, and made sure they'd never act again in this field. As Jungwoo looks down at the script, Gil Junho wonders intently just how good is he. Page 34 of the script details Scene 14, a bustling school hallway where a character named Taekyung, possessed by Young-sik's soul, is extremely flustered and confused, questioning why am I here? Why does my voice sound like this? The visual representation of the script scene shows a sunlit school hallway, with students milling about, as Jungwoo presumably begins to immerse himself in the role. Gil Junho, portraying the disoriented character, glances around the bustling school hallway, a Korean onomatopoeia looking around emphasizing his confusion. Clutching his throat in character, he gasps out the line, why am I here? His panic escalates as he exclaims, and my voice? What happened to IT? His face a mask of terror. Choi Jamin, with an encouraging smile, then turns to Jungwoo and asks, see, IT's not so hard. Right. Want to give IT a try? Jungwoo, holding the script, pauses thoughtfully, a speech bubble with ellipses indicating his silence. Remaining seated at the table, Jungwoo calmly holds the script, the bright office interior visible around him. He then places the script on the table, stating decisively, I can't do it here. Choi Jamin, with Gil Junho looking on, gestures questioningly and asks, why not? Is there a problem? Jungwoo, his hand resting on the closed script, clarifies, I can't fill in the lines. Choi Jamin, a slight irk mark on his forehead but maintaining a smile, then inquires, do you mean the location makes IT difficult? Choi Jamin mused that most people practice in quiet places for immersion, but Jungwoo clarified it wasn't about immersion, but the lines themselves. Jungwoo elaborated, mentioning the ambient sounds of skateboards, along with the laughter and chatter of students. He continued, describing the wind blowing through the window and the general commotion of students playing around. Jungwoo concluded that the noise mixed with the lines is precisely what's absent in their current setting. Choi Jamin, a bead of sweat on his temple, questioned what difference noise blended into dialogue could possibly make. Gil Junho, after a moment of thoughtful silence, suddenly leaned forward with a determined expression. Reaching across the table, Gil Junho took the script from Jungwoo as Choi Jamin exclaimed Junho. Choi Jamin, visibly startled, asked Gil Junho what was wrong as he looked at the script. A dramatic close-up showed Gil Junho's eye, glinting with a sudden, intense realization. Choi Jamin internally remarked with surprise that he had never witnessed Junho behave like this before. Mansik inquires if Choi Jamin is also considering basic training, large-scale domestic and international projects, and overseas education opportunities, adding, of course, if he wants them. Choi Jamin, seated at the table with Gil Junho, looks intently at Jungwoo. Choi Jamin admits he's not sure what all of that means, but suggests Jungwoo try it even if the conditions aren't ideal, framing it as a simple audition or reading. Jungwoo's bright blue eyes widen slightly as the word audition appears above him. Jungwoo then clarifies, so that's what this is. I thought I was being asked to act, and adds, I didn't understand. You're asking me to sit here and do that, right? Jungwoo notes thoughtfully that the scene actually requires a partner. Gil Junho, looking down at the script with his chin resting on his hand, appears to be considering something. A flashback shows Gil Junho receiving an award, with text identifying him as the featured performer who played XX in less than 30 greater than, as Jungwoo's tearful face from a past performance is shown, with the thought, don't tell me it was you? Gil Junho smiles faintly, looking over his shoulder as the sun sets, with the words let's try to be a little happier each day appearing above him. Jungwoo, with a slight, contemplative expression, thinks to himself, this might actually be fun. Jungwoo then asks if they have another script, prompting Choi Jamin to question why he would need one. He explains that he believes it would be better to match their timing together, referring to Mr. Gil Junho. Gil Junho looks slightly surprised by Jungwoo's direct suggestion to act together. Jungwoo further elaborates that he thought it would be better to work together, rather than him performing alone. Choi Jamin, with a slight smile, internally remarks, look at this kid. He then wonders if Jungwoo's audacity stems from his youth, noting that he's got guts. While Choi Jamin apologetically suggests it might be difficult, Gil Junho interjects, let's do it. Let's try to work together. Gil Junho then asks director Choi Jamin if he has another script, causing Choi Jamin to exclaim what? In surprise. Choi Jamin internally questions with astonishment if Gil Junho is genuinely planning to act opposite this child right here and now. A close-up on Gil Junho's eye, with a bead of sweat nearby, accompanies Choi Jamin's bewildered thought. What on earth did he see? Jungwoo maintains a composed, almost stoic expression as he observes the scene unfolding. Gil Junho, on the other hand, exclaims in frustration, shit. What is this, really? He then gestures animatedly towards Jungwoo, urging, don't just stand there, do something. While Choi Jamin watches from the table. Choi Jamin, arms crossed, internally praises Gil Junho, thinking, as expected. He's not Gil Junho for nothing, just by changing his voice tone. He's showing that he's embodying a 40-year-old man. A close-up on Gil Junho's eye reveals his internal thought. This is to the teacher. Jungwoo, now in character, retorts angrily, I'm upset too, you punk. Gil Junho, still acting, laments, at least you got younger, teacher. What about me? He then questions Jungwoo's attire, and what's with these clothes? You have quite unique taste. To which Jungwoo, annoyed, replies, taste, hey, is this the time to talk about taste? Gil Junho's intense gaze is shown as he asks, don't you understand the situation? Gil Junho internally reflects, I thought IT was just my imagination because IT was so subtle. But in the voice of the kid responding, there's a slight trace of the middle school student's voice tone that I adopted. Did he understand the character I was portraying and my interpretation after hearing just 2 lines? And immediately changed. Gil Junho, in character, defensively asks Jungwoo, why are you complaining to me? This isn't my fault, to which Jungwoo retorts, then is IT my fault? Jungwoo, embodying the teacher, sternly warns, anyway, you don't think about doing anything reckless with my body, just stay still, got IT? Gil Junho internally observes Jungwoo's performance, noting the slightly trembling fingers, a detail that impresses him. He continues to analyze Jungwoo's portrayal, recognizing an anxious expression mixed with firmness, and the attitude of recognizing the surroundings while trailing off. The end of lines in case someone hears. Gil Junho further notes Jungwoo's subtle gestures, the angle of the gaze, and the actions of slightly narrowing and widening with each line delivered. Gil Junho, with tears in his eyes, exclaims, so what are you going to do? Internally marveling, to be able to manipulate me like this with just a script, without any prior preparation. I'm stopping myself. Jungwoo, fully in character as the flustered student, clutches his head, shouting, you're the teacher. Shouldn't you know something? I'm telling you, I don't know either. This is driving me crazy, really. A close-up on Jungwoo's face reveals his internal thought. Still, IT is different. The scene shows Jungwoo, as the student, reacting with distress, touching his head and then his collar, while Gil Junho watches him intently. Gil Junho stands with a somber, thoughtful expression, a bead of sweat on his temple, deeply affected by Jungwoo's performance. Gil Junho internally acknowledges that if Jungwoo had truly intended to stand out, his own acting would have been completely overshadowed. Jungwoo, holding the script, confirms that his earlier statements about the missing ambient sounds were not just empty words. Jungwoo then tells Gil Junho he'll give a signal shortly, and to return then. making Gil Junho wonder about the boy's background and experiences. Junwoo announces he will stop the scene there. Gil Junho and Junwoo stand facing each other in the meeting room after their impromptu performance. Junwoo remarks that it's definitely different from performing alone in the theater, adding that it was fun and thanking Gil Junho. Gil Junho, taken aback by the thank you, remains silent for a moment, processing the interaction. With a bead of sweat, Gil Junho thinks to himself that he should be the one expressing gratitude. Gil Junho ponders what it would be like to properly work with a child of Junwoo's extraordinary talent. Gil Junho then tells Junwoo that he also enjoyed their performance together. Gil Junho, standing with Junwoo in the meeting room, stated with conviction that he wouldn't forget this day. Choi Jamin, visibly astonished, turned to Gil Junho, exclaiming that this was beyond anything he had anticipated. With a bead of sweat, Choi Jamin confessed he was truly amazed and at a loss for further words. Gil Junho then questioned Junwoo about a specific line change, asking if it was intentional. While Choi Jamin suggested they move on to discussing the contract, Junwoo calmly affirmed that yes, he had altered it slightly. Gil Junho further analyzed that in a real scene, his own gesture would have been different, to which Junwoo agreed, explaining the camera framing would typically only show up to the shoulders. Junwoo elaborated that he adjusted his gaze for the current setting, though looking up would have been the standard approach, causing a flustered Choi Jamin to try and interject. Junwoo, looking thoughtfully at Gil Junho, then began to pose a question. But perhaps. Gil Junho, meeting Junwoo's gaze, intently inquired if Junwoo also performed in theater. Elsewhere, Mansik, looking somewhat anxious, glanced around a hallway as if searching for someone, his eyes scanning the area. Mansik, standing in the hallway, recognized the man inside the meeting room as Gil Junho. He recalled hearing them doing a situational play, and couldn't believe the partner was indeed Gil Junho. A sense of satisfaction washed over Mansik, thinking it was good he brought Junwoo. Though he noticed Gil Junho's expression, Mansik then wondered with concern why Gil Junho looked like that, fearing he might be angry at the kid's attitude. Inside, Mansik explained to Gil Junho that he operates a small theater in the countryside, prompting Gil Junho to ask how many productions he had planned. Mansik, slightly perplexed, voiced his curiosity about why Gil Junho was asking such questions. Gil Junho then revealed he was wondering if he could perform on Mansik's stage, causing Mansik to ask in surprise, "What? At my theater?" The thought of Gil Junho in my production sent a jolt of disbelief through Mansik, his eyes wide with shock. Mansik, gesturing apologetically, admitted he was curious about Gil Junho's conditions but confessed it was quite radical, and doubted he could match his pay, citing recent cancellations and audience loss. Gil Junho, with a reassuring smile and closed eyes, simply stated that the money was fine. Gil Junho then confessed with a slight smile, "It's just that I've become greedy." Mansik, looking surprised, echoed Gil Junho's sentiment with a questioning greedy. Gil Junho then inquired if Mansik had reached an agreement with Junwoo, to which Mansik confirmed he had just finished speaking with the child, and Gil Junho stated that if that was the case, there shouldn't be any problems. However, Mansik hesitated, uttering a thoughtful, but as he looked at Gil Junho then asked if the child had only worked there, expressing that honestly, he found it hard to believe Junwoo was from such a theater group. Mansik quickly apologized if he had offended, clarifying he didn't mean it that way, while Gil Junho acknowledged it was understandable, as he had felt the same. Mansik then admitted with a slight laugh, "It's hard to call it working." He explained that, anyway, it wasn't like he knew everything about the kid, who mostly studied on his own, reading books and scripts, as Junwoo was shown engrossed in a book. Mansik confessed, with a close-up on Junwoo's intense blue eyes, "I don't even know what he's learning from that." Gil Junho, looking surprised, repeated, "Books and scripts." Gil Junho, utterly astonished, questioned if Junwoo had truly learned everything on his own. Mansik clarified to the still stunned Gil Junho that the boy is simply naturally gifted, and further inquiry would only frustrate them both. With a serious expression, Gil Junho then declared his anticipation for their future collaboration. Mansik reached out his hand for a handshake as Gil Junho stood near a large monitor. A subtle smile played on Gil Junho's lips as he considered the prospect. Their hands met in a firm shake, Gil Junho echoing his enthusiasm to work together. Later, Junwoo stood alone in a spacious, sunlit hall, gazing at a large screen displaying a historical drama scene. From a higher angle, Junwoo, hands casually in his pockets, continued to observe the images on the monitor. The screen depicted a man and woman in traditional Korean clothing, while smaller panels showed a startled man and a young boy affectionately petting a dog. A montage of dramatic scenes flashed across the screen, including a weeping woman and a man amidst an explosion, all while Junwoo watched intently from behind. Junwoo stood silently, his expression unreadable as he gazed into the distance. Mansik, looking distraught, gestured towards Junwoo, then covered his face in apparent frustration, exclaiming about the situation. A thoughtful silence hung in the air, reflected in Junwoo's unwavering blue eye. Choi Jamin then approached, addressing him with a polite, "Student, there you are." The director's expression was serious as he faced the young actor. Junwoo listened as Choi Jamin questioned if he was truly considering the implications, highlighting the unique production and the rare opportunities it presented. A glint of resolve, or perhaps deep thought, shone in Junwoo's focused eye. Choi Jamin then uttered a simple, "I'm sorry." With a sigh, he confessed, "I've never felt this disappointed before." Nevertheless, Choi Jamin extended his business card offering still. "If you need help with the performance, or if you change your mind later, please make sure to contact me." A bright cityscape with the NK Entertainment building is shown, overlaid with the word absolutely. The exterior of Mansik's A Muttering Man Theater is depicted under a bright sky, with a creaking sound effect and the thought, "This is quite stiff." A wrench is shown tightening something while Mansik, from behind, wipes his brow and asks, "Is IT done?" Mansik, looking pleased, muses to himself, "To think that kid and Gil Junho would perform together on my stage." Junwoo appears, finding Mansik on a stepladder, who asks in surprise, "Oh, you're here. What are you doing here so early in the morning?" Junwoo, looking at Mansik, then questions, "There's an employee here. Why are you doing that?" Mansik, with a cheerful expression, dismissively waves his hand, telling Junwoo, "You go practice." Junwoo, with a slight bead of sweat, suggests nitrogen monoxide, WAIT. "Why don't you take a break and recharge?" While Mansik tells him to go play over there for a bit. Mansik turns and begins to climb the stepladder again as Junwoo watches him from behind. The stepladder is shown firmly in place as Mansik, from above, asks, "How is IT?" Junwoo, standing in the theater aisle, utters a soft "oh" as Mansik asks, "IT's not bad, right?" From behind, Junwoo observes Mansik working on a prop cabinet, thinking, "I haven't just been watching all the things you've been doing. Did you adjust this for the upcoming performance?" Mansik, still focused on the cabinet filled with bottles and glasses, replies, "Yeah, I tweaked IT a bit." Junwoo internally admits, "Honestly, I was a bit surprised," as he looks at a candelabra and other stage props. A close-up profile of Junwoo's face shows his continued internal surprise. Junwoo reflects, "I forgot because I always saw him admiring things next to me, but this guy. He studied theater for a long time and ran a theater," as Mansik stands proudly in the theater. Looking at Mansik, Junwoo thinks, seeing him go this far, he must have high expectations for the upcoming performance. Junwoo then states with a slight smile, "Yes, IT's much better." A close-up on Junwoo's bright blue eye shows a subtle glint, accompanied by a Korean onomatopoeia glance. As Mansik continues to work near the prop cabinet and a stepladder, Junwoo considers, "Maybe I'll try to fix it up later." Mansik, with a serious expression, looks sideways, a thoughtful glint in his eye. Turning to Junwoo in the empty theater, Mansik stated, "By the way, there's something I'm curious about," to which Junwoo inquired, "What is it?" Mansik, his hand still bandaged, confessed, "No matter how much I think about it, I can't understand why you did refuse NK when you're willing to perform with Gil Junho." Junwoo simply looked on, a silent ellipsis hanging in the air above him. Mansik elaborated that if Junwoo had gone there, he could have seen many scripts by renowned writers and done much more acting, at least much more than here. With a slightly pained smile, Mansik admitted, "I've never really understood you before, but this time, I'm genuinely curious." Junwoo maintained his silence, his expression neutral as he listened. Finally, Junwoo turned slightly, gesturing dismissively as he replied, "Well, I don't remember." A bead of sweat appeared on Mansik's temple as he pressed, "Come on, you didn't do it because of me, did you?" Junwoo, already walking up the theater steps, casually suggested, "Aren't you hungry? Let's go get breakfast," leading Mansik to exclaim in frustration, "Huh? Look at this guy. Is this for real?" Mansik, from the street below the theater, calls out, "Hey, you," while also deciding, "I'll have kimchi stew. What about you?" Muffled voices emanated from behind a slightly ajar door, accompanied by the faint creak of its hinges. Inside, Gil Junho diligently took notes while conversing with Junwoo, as Mansik secretly observed them from the doorway. Peering through the narrow opening, Mansik watched intently, a bead of sweat forming on his temple. Gil Junho, while writing, pondered internally whether Junwoo was incredibly ambitious about the stage, or perhaps obsessed with something entirely different. The two continued their discussion standing, Gil Junho still holding his notebook and pen, listening to Junwoo. Mansik, still spying, mused that the scene resembled the play itself, and admitted he hadn't expected Gil Junho to arrive until the actual performance day. Later, Mansik let out a big yawn, covering his mouth as he greeted the morning with a cheerful good morning. It turned out Gil Junho had even rented a nearby place to practice daily, arriving at the theater earlier than Mansik each morning without any sign of tiredness. As he now spoke to Mansik with a smile, wallet in hand, with a bead of sweat on his temple, Mansik watched Gil Junho depart down the hallway after a brief yes, hello. Rather than viewing it as mere practice, Gil Junho appeared to genuinely relish the collaborative process of harmonizing with Junwoo and discussing the nuances of acting. Mansik, observing this, wondered with a bead of sweat why Gil Junho hadn't left yet. Junwoo, noticing Mansik's confusion, admitted he didn't know either, while Mansik scratched his head, equally perplexed by Gil Junho's continued presence. A close-up on Mansik's eyes showed his silent contemplation, a bead of sweat still visible. Elsewhere, Gil Junho sat alone on a couch, looking somewhat troubled, his legs trembling slightly. Junwoo then asked Mansik if Gil Junho always appeared that way, to which Mansik, surprised, questioned what he meant by always. The young actor clarified, asking if Gil Junho consistently wore a constipated expression when practicing with him, prompting Gil Junho to ponder with the while holding an e-cigarette. Mansik admitted it happens sometimes, then commented to Junwoo that he initially thought Gil Junho would be very stiff, but found him friendlier than anticipated. Later, Gil Junho approached Junwoo, holding a script, as they stood in a sunlit room. Junwoo looked slightly surprised, a bead of sweat on his temple, while Gil Junho, holding the script, appeared to be enthusiastically explaining something. Junwoo states there's no point in continuing the discussion, as even if he interprets it a certain way, it won't come out like that. Gil Junho, looking earnest, advises Junwoo that he has to find it himself. A look of sudden realization and slight embarrassment crosses Gil Junho's face as he utters ah. From a higher vantage point, Mansik observes Gil Junho and Junwoo talking near a doorway, then sees Gil Junho walk away down the hall. Mansik, with a bead of sweat, internally notes that this situation seems to have changed somehow. As time passed, a week before the performance, preparations finally reached their final stage. Yet there was one problem. A poster for the play The Chaser from the Outskirts shows a cloaked figure in the rain, listing Gil Junho as Detective Anton and Seong Hyunjun and Kim Chae-young in supporting roles, with fugitive Pavel unassigned. Mansik, with a serious and contemplative expression, utters a thoughtful HMM. A title card dramatically presents the name Fugitive Pavel against a swirling blue background. The poster for The Chaser from the Outskirts is displayed again, highlighting the uncast role of Fugitive Pavel. Mansik sat at his computer, thoughtfully considering the situation with a soft HMM. Online, the theater warehouse community buzzed with news of Gil Junho's screen comeback, noting the explosive reaction to his profile and how his sudden stage appearance became a major topic. A sense of relief washed over Mansik as he contemplated the public's focus. However, this intense interest in Gil Junho meant the truly important issue of casting Fugitive Pavel was being overshadowed, with online comments speculating about the uncast counterpart. With only a week remaining until the performance, the pressure mounted in the sunlit corner of a room. Strolling down the theater hallway, Mansik worried that they couldn't proceed without announcing the complete cast list. Hearing a noise, he cautiously peeked through a doorway, wondering who could be there at such a late hour. His eye widened in sudden, utter surprise at what he discovered. An astonished wow escaped Mansik's lips as he took in the scene. Before him, Junwoo knelt on a meticulously prepared stage, carefully handling a teacup, prompting Mansik to internally question if this was truly his theater. Junwoo, with a focused gaze, turns his head slightly, his bright blue eye prominent. Mansik walks down the theater aisle towards Junwoo, asking what brings him here at this hour and what all this is. Junwoo, standing before a beautifully arranged stage set, asks Mansik with a slight smile, "Why? You don't like it?" Mansik looks utterly astonished, his mouth agape as he processes Junwoo's question and the transformed stage. From Mansik's perspective, looking out over the theater seats towards the stage, he exclaims, "No way, I mean, is this really my theater?" Noting that though small, it looked like the National Theater. Junwoo holds a book, thinking that reading all those directing theory books wasn't in vain. A close-up shows a teacup and a lit candle on a small table, part of the new set, as Mansik wonders how this atmosphere was created since nothing expensive was added. Mansik, with a bead of sweat, utters what? As Junwoo explains, he just added a little to what Mansik had already prepared. From an overhead view, Junwoo stands near the elaborate prop cabinet, telling Mansik, "I haven't just been watching all you've been doing, you know." A close-up on Mansik's eye, with a bead of sweat, shows his continued disbelief and amazement. Mansik, looking at the transformed stage, thinks to himself, in a stage like this. Junwoo wipes sweat from his brow with a sigh of PHEW, as Mansik watches him with a slightly surprised expression. As Junwoo pushes his hair back, Mansik looks on with a startled expression, remaining silent. Mansik, looking at Junwoo who has swept his hair back, asks with a sparkle in the background, Were you always this handsome? To which Junwoo replies with a confused. Junwoo, touching his face, explains that because of his past profession, he always kept his face unnoticed and never really thought of going fully barefaced. While Mansik asks why he always hides that handsome face, a close-up focuses on Junwoo's bright, determined blue eye. Mansik, with a thoughtful and slightly weary expression, appears to have been thinking a lot. Junwoo, standing confidently with his hands on his hips, tells Mansik, I feel a bit sorry. Text overlaying a scene of a play with a small audience explains. It's going to be on a whole other level from the past performance with less than 20 people. I figured this event would bring rumors about me one way or another. The poster for the chaser from the outskirts is displayed again, alongside online comments discussing Gil Junho's appearance and speculating about the uncast role. Junwoo, with a faint smile and bright blue eyes, thinks, still, it doesn't feel awkward at all. A text box states, thinking back, I'm angry at myself for suppressing all this time. Mansik passionately declares, I'll take responsibility for whatever happens next. So, live doing what you want. A close-up of Junwoo's profile is accompanied by the thought, it's a second life I somehow obtained. Mansik, facing Junwoo in the theater, says, but hey, I forgot to ask, are you really okay? Junwoo, with a confident smile, replies, I'm fine. I won't cause you any trouble. Mansik internally wonders, how did he know? Thinking, sometimes he's scarier than a ghost. Mansik, looking at his hand, then suggests if you really want, there's a way to not reveal your profile. A mysterious persona or something. Mansik, with a bead of sweat, internally questions, what did I just say? Then thinks, there's nitrogen monoxide such thing. It doesn't matter anymore. Mansik asks Junwoo, doesn't matter. Then adds, I mean, is that something easily resolved? Mansik, gesturing from the audience, tells Junwoo on stage that he might end up on the news, with interview clips likely circulating. Mansik looks on with a serious expression as Junwoo's sentiment, I don't care, is voiced. Junwoo, a slight smile on his face, then poses the rhetorical question, what's worse than dying? A bead of sweat forms on Mansik's temple as he looks utterly surprised, questioning, really? Junwoo glances back confidently, declaring with resolve, let's go for it, then. His expression determined. Junwoo adds that he would now be disappointed if this opportunity simply faded away. The two stand facing each other in the empty theater. Mansik in the aisle, and Junwoo on the stage near a table and chair. A close-up reveals Mansik's stern and resolute face as he gazes forward. Mansik reassures Junwoo, telling him not to worry about anything but to focus solely on the stage, promising to handle everything else. With a determined smile, Mansik emphatically vows that, at the very least, he will ensure nothing bad ever happens to Junwoo as a result of performing at his theater. Junwoo looked out with a confident expression, the city sprawling beneath a bright sky. Online, people buzzed about the main actor's profile, speculating if he was a newcomer or perhaps an NK trainee. The official poster for the chaser from the outskirts was revealed, listing Gil Junho as Detective Anton and Han Junwoo as Fugitive Pavel. A striking portrait from the poster identified Han Junwoo as the actor playing Fugitive Pavel. On the street, Mansik's theater, a muttering man, proudly displayed a large banner for the upcoming play. A significant crowd had gathered outside the theater, indicating immense public interest. Peeking through the stage curtains, Mansik overheard audience members marveling at Gil Junho's return and the difficulty of securing tickets. Seated audience members excitedly discussed how such a small venue managed to book Gil Junho, eager for the performance to begin. Mansik, still observing from behind the curtain, acknowledged Gil Junho's undeniable star power with a thought. Gil Junho, diligently taking notes, remarked to Junwoo that perhaps his own recent focus was due to following Junwoo's lead during their practice sessions as Mansik watched from a distance. Mansik, observing the audience, thinks that seeing their reactions firsthand truly makes him feel Gil Junho's fame. To audience members discuss how well decorated the small theater is, with one remarking she's never seen such unique staging before, as sets are usually quite similar. Another audience member comments that upon entering, they felt like they had stepped into an abandoned mine, noting the gloomy lighting. A close-up shows Mansik with a subtle, please smile, having overheard the audience's impressions. The scene shifts to the bustling actor waiting room where Gil Junho, dressed as a priest, reviews his script while others get ready. Mansik looks towards Junwoo, who stands near a door and thoughtfully utters HMM. Mansik then interjects with a slightly flustered, "Oh no, wait." Junwoo turns his head slightly as Mansik thinks his name, Junwoo. Dressed in costume with suspenders, Junwoo asked, "Ready?" Then states, "It's time to go on." The play The Outlander Chaser begins, introducing Detective Anton, who lost his family and a leg to a man 10 years ago, now shown amidst a bloody scene and later driving with determination. From then on, a long, fierce chase began, introducing Pavel, the fugitive who got tangled up in all of it by mistake, as he looked weary. Gil Junho portrays Anton, a character harboring deep-seated anger, while Jungwoo takes on the role of Pavel, who endures wrongful imprisonment. With Anton's intense eyes shown, the narrative promises a never-ending pursuit, full of deception and surprises until the very end. As Pavel appears anxious with sweat dripping, Pavel, played by Junwoo, is depicted running frantically through a dimly lit hallway with Anton, played by Gil Junho, visible in the background pursuing him. The truth of the situation remains unclear, with the inner psyches of the characters being the key. As the audience watches, the stage curtains begin to part. A chair leg firmly strikes the stage floor, signaling the start of an intense scene. Anton, portrayed by Gil Junho, stands on stage with his cane, declaring with grim satisfaction that this is where the bastard has been hiding. Walking across the stage, Anton states it's about time to bring this story to a close, reflecting that while 10 years is an eternity for some, it wasn't such a long time for him. To audience members, a boy and a girl watch captivated, the boy remarking on Gil Junho's incredible pronunciation and the girl adding he's incredible. As Anton's voiceover reveals, he's never forgotten his target for a second. In another part of the audience, a girl scolds a boy for attempting to film, but he defends his actions, wondering when else he'll get the chance to see Gil Junho perform live in a theater. Mansik recalls the day he accidentally encountered Gil Junho, who now stands on stage as Anton, illuminated by a spotlight. Watching from the wings, Mansik wonders if Gil Junho was always this exceptional, acknowledging he's in a completely different league. Gil Junho, as Anton, commands the stage, his profile lit by the focus beam of light. The audience is visibly impressed as Gil Junho's powerful monologue concludes, with one spectator remarking that this is no joke. A bead of sweat forms on Mansik's temple as he recognizes that true professionals are simply on another level. After Gil Junho's stunning performance, the audience already feels there's nothing more to see, with some vowing to book tickets again, calling his talent seriously crazy. A dark, ominous thought, "You've turned me into a monster," hangs in the air, hinting at the play's grim themes. The young audience members, a boy and a girl, look up in surprise, the boy questioning what's happening now. Junwoo then makes his entrance as Pavel, a character described as a grown man who has long enjoyed bizarre murders, prompting a thought about whether this portrayal is truly okay. Despite playing a mature character, Junwoo, at 17, finds it challenging, as his voice naturally retains a youthful tone. Yet Junwoo, as Pavel, questions himself with a pained expression, "But right?" From the moment his lines began, the young audience members watched with wide-eyed, breathless anticipation. Indeed, as Mansik observed from the wings, no one in the theater perceived Junwoo as a mere 17-year-old any longer. Mansik himself wore an expression of utter, almost disbelieving, astonishment at the transformation. The entire audience collectively held their breath, completely captivated by the unfolding drama. Spectators found themselves unable to tear their gaze away from Junwoo's commanding presence on stage. Then, the play hurtled towards its climax with Anton fiercely accusing Pavel. "Did you really think you could hide everything? You may have hidden the evidence, but you couldn't hide yourself." As Anton declared there was nothing left for Pavel to do, and demanded he stop acting, Pavel stumbled back, crying out, "Ah, no." Pavel, overwhelmed, clutched his head, desperately asking how many times he had to repeat himself. He then looked up in anguish, vehemently shouting, "I said I'm not." The young audience members stared in disbelief, the girl exclaiming, "What the?" while the boy wondered, "How many times do I have to say?" A close-up captured Pavel's mouth as a soft sound escaped him. With a chillingly playful smile and clasped hands, Pavel then insisted, "Really, I'm serious." An audience member, completely captivated, could only manage a stunned WHOA. The crowd watched Anton's feet under the spotlight, one person letting out a surprised "huh." From the wings, Mansik observed Pavel turning his back on Anton during the intense stage confrontation. Mansik himself was utterly transfixed, a wave of chills washing over him. Indeed, every time Junwoo delivered a line, a shiver ran through the audience, his overwhelming presence undeniable. As Pavel moved, the once dominant presence of Gil Junho, performing passionately on the left, began to recede from the audience's immediate focus. Anton then looked towards Pavel, who stood further upstage, bathed in an ethereal light. The audience, the backstage crew, and NK staff watched, utterly captivated by the performance. Even Gil Junho's manager was among those observing the stage with rapt attention. The manager, wearing a deadline artist cap, looked on with a stunned expression, a bead of sweat on his temple. Junwoo, with a bright, almost manic smile, held everyone spellbound. They were all speechless. And then, the stage performance concluded as the heavy red curtains began to draw closed. A young girl in the audience, tears in her eyes, clapped her hands together, exclaiming wow. As the cast, including Junwoo and Gil Junho, took their bows, the entire theater erupted in thunderous applause. Gil Junho, from the audience, clapped enthusiastically, shouting yay, and remarking that the performance was intense. He internally reflected that while he'd always been proud of his acting and respected the stage, everything he'd earned now felt a bit ashamed. Two women in the audience eagerly discussed the performance, one asking for Junwoo's name, the other admitting she didn't know but that it was crazy, questioning if this was what theater was supposed to be. The manager, with a bead of sweat, conceded that it certainly appeared that way. He then directed attention to where the audience's gaze was now firmly fixed upon Junwoo on stage. A close-up captured Junwoo's serene profile, bathed in a warm, ethereal light, his blue eyes shining,